Lord of the Mysteries, A Time Traveler in the Fourth Age by author Kai Yunji. Change 101-125. Chapter 101 Mr. A, Peanuts for Me. Vice Admiral Hurricane, Zillingus. The pirate general's mission to infiltrate Backland was to assassinate Duke Negan. Shah-Ir thought about it and gave up the idea of eating this wind-loving one. I don't want to eat Adam's food. It feels weird. He would rather eat what the real creator gave him. If it's appropriate, I can help. It's not that troublesome. After Miss Justice has investigated the results, she can report it to the Orthodox Church and all problems will be solved. Shah-Ir didn't want to get involved as it had nothing to do with him. But he had no doubt about the strength of the Church's strike against Wild Beyonders. The secret praying people trained by the Church are the Sleepless Ones. The Wild Sleepless Ones are the evil secret praying people. This is very Orthodox Church of God. That's what I want to do, too. Alger smiled. The Church of the Storm can tolerate defectors, but you won't be able to thrive after you defect. Under normal circumstances, he might not bother to care about you, but this is no reason for you to run to Backland and act wild. Audrey thought of something at this time. She looked at the Angel and asked, Mr. Angel, can you help me get rid of Mr. A from the Aurora Society? I don't know what you want as a reward, can you tell me, or, money? Audrey felt a chill run down her spine when she thought of that disgusting guy. If it weren't for Mr. Fool, who couldn't be moved by money, she would have made this request a long time ago. Her words attracted the attention of several people. Except for Derek, who didn't seem to care, the looks of the other three were very obvious. Shah-Ir asked in confusion, how did Mr. A offend you? Is it that serious? Aren't you a simple, innocent and ordinary noble lady who has never seen blood? Audrey considered how to explain. Shah-Ir didn't urge her, he just felt that Hazel was more ordinary. At least, he couldn't imagine what it would be like if Hazel asked him to kill someone. It was too abstract. I was at a secret party and he handed me a note alone and it looked disgusting. Audrey felt very aggrieved. It was her first time attending an extraordinary offline gathering, and she encountered such a thing. The ones targeting him were the notorious Aurora Society. Mr. Fool's expression grew serious when he heard this. Is the Aurora Society's messenger targeting Miss Justice? This is no small matter. Puff. After hearing the girl's concerns, Shah-Ir couldn't help but laugh. Mr. Angel. Audrey couldn't stop laughing at the Angel, and couldn't help but raise her hand and hit him lightly. What's so funny about this? She was super scared. Sorry, I couldn't help it, but this is really funny. You actually thought that the Aurora Society's messengers would have worldly desires. Are you as beautiful as crazy beauties? How could Mr. A be sexually interested in you? Compared to him, a human being, the messenger of the Aurora Society is simply a saint. When Shah-Ir thought of this, he couldn't help laughing again. The degenerate secret worshippers are not interested in women, while the holy hymns love to party. This is really sneaky. Ms. Justice, there are very few cases like this in the Aurora Society. They prefer to create some bloody and horrific cases to please the true creator they believe in. Alger also felt that Miss Justice was thinking too simply. Isn't that more dangerous? The corner of Klein's mouth twitched as he looked at the two guys who were hanging high. When Derek heard the true creator, he wanted to ask something, but after thinking for a while, he didn't say anything. Mr. Angel, Mr. Hanged Man, what you mean is. Audrey clenched her hands tighter. Was she becoming a sacrifice to the evil god? And Mr. Angel is going too far. He is still laughing. I'm sorry, I just think Mr. A is being wronged. He obviously had good intentions and wanted to invite you to join the Aurora Society, but not only did you not appreciate it, you even wanted to kill him. Shah-Ir explained after laughing enough. Invite me to join the Aurora Society. Audrey was stunned, her eyes widened, as if she had heard some huge joke. Invite her to join the Aurora Society. She is a low and noble, a believer of the night, and even the prince is her suitor. How could she possibly join the Aurora Society? Yes, Aurora has only one standard for recruiting people. That's the look. As for the rest, it doesn't matter. Shaw explained to Audrey the Aurora Society's recruitment criteria. Audrey was stunned after hearing this, not knowing what expression to show. Alger recalled the information about the Aurora Society and found that it seemed to be true. They are not interested in women, they just have a unique pursuit of beauty. As Shaw spoke, his expression became strange. It turned out that normal people could not understand shepherds. What kind of face control organization is this? The expression on Klein the Fool's face was equally interesting. How did the Aurora Society develop into this? Heinerson Vincent was shot in the head, and Klein did not see his specific appearance. However, Selena Wood is indeed very beautiful. But I don't want to join the Aurora Society. Audrey said helplessly that Mr. A's approval of her looks made her feel a little amused. Will Aurora go out of her way to harass you? They have seen all kinds of beauties. Shaw signaled Miss Justice to relax. Her appearance was not so stunning as to make Mr. A lose his composure. Mr. Angel, your comfort is really reassuring. Audrey relaxed and said helplessly. I think so too. Shaw nodded, then looked at Mr. Fool and asked, Mr. Fool, you said before that the ancient power is awakening. Is this true? Why are you asking me this all of a sudden? What did you know? Klein the Fool looked at the angel with interest and asked, why do you suddenly ask this? Mr. Hanged Man said that in recent decades, the frequency of activities of various secret organizations has increased. I took some time to investigate and found out. Shaw paused suddenly while speaking, seeming to be very conflicted. Did you find any traces? Alger looked at the angel and asked. I'm not sure, but there seems to be more than one such person like Mr. Fool. As Shaw spoke, he glanced at the Fool cautiously, as if he wanted to observe the Fool's reaction. More than one. The Fool's heart skipped a beat, but his expression and movements became more casual. Oh. He uttered a brief, doubtful sound, not loud but powerful. Shaw glanced at the others, then smiled at the Fool. Alger frowned. What did Angel mean? Was he hinting to Mr. Fool? Audrey really wanted to know, but when she thought about what Mr. Angel had said before, she had no right to ask, so she had to give up the idea and secretly guess what Mr. Angel meant. Chapter 102, Changing Style of Script. Could it be that Mr. Angel discovered traces of a secret existence similar to Mr. Fool? Maybe Mr. Fool knows the other party. The kitten in Miss Justice's heart is about to meow. What you see may not be what you see. Mr. Fool responded. Riddler, right. Who wouldn't know that? He now somewhat understood how the Emperor felt when facing Zeratul. These Riddlers were really annoying. And Klein's answer is based on evidence and reference. He observed the angel's emotions through his spiritual vision, which was still mainly purple, symbolizing spirituality. This means that this guy may not have really found any substantial evidence, but just had some guesses and wanted to verify his judgment through his own reaction. What you see may not be what you see. Shaw nodded thoughtfully. He seemed to understand, but also seemed not to understand, and fell into deep thought. Justice, the Hanged Man, and the Sun looked at each other blankly. They don't understand anything. Don't think about things that are too far away from you. This tarot club ends here. Klein tapped the table, announcing the end of the party. He was a little tired. Your will is obeyed. Shaw followed the crowd, bowed to Mr. Fool, and said goodbye. Real world. Shaw opened his eyes and listened carefully, but it was still quiet outside the bathroom. That's good. It seems the church doesn't have too many wage thieves who slack off during work hours. He returned to his old workstation, where Senior Gray was still sorting documents. You became a Sequence 7 Beander. When the lady saw Shaw coming back, her expression looked a little strange. Clearly, she was still a senior a month ago. It's nothing to be proud of. Shaw raised his chin slightly and said. So you came back just to show off to me. Senior Gray rolled her eyes at Shaw and said, aren't you proud? If you're not proud, why are you raising your chin so high? Are you trying to look at me through your nose? Not really. I've worn the Chinese gate enough. The environment inside is a bit harmful to my health. I'm back to rest. Shah-Ir separated some of the documents on Senior Gray's desk. The shadow under his feet stood up, like a living thing. Walking in the shadows, he made some black tea for the two of them. Fortunately, the lighting in the church is not very good. Shah-Ir was quite satisfied with the architectural style of the Church of Night, which was full of shadows. Your ability is so convenient. Senior Gray's eyes lit up as she looked at the shadow servant. Not as good as a nightmare. I always think it's more fun to dream. The shadow servant brought the teacup over and then turned back into Shah-Ir's shadow. Shah-Ir picked up the teacup, took a sip and said, "Perhaps dreams don't think so, but they would rather have their own good dreams. Here is a document related to you, you can take a look." Allison Gray smiled and handed Shah-Ir a document. "What's the news from Ting'an City?" Shah-Ir took it and took a look. "This is an extraordinary fraud case reported by Ting'an City. After the steel company's money was trapped, the swindler Lenevis did not stop, but chose to continue to expand financing, and even extended his hands to conservative aristocrats who had transformation needs and were not very familiar with the business model. Relying on the tens of thousands of pounds of deposit bills from the Ting'an branch of the Backland Bank, Senator Maynard planned to take action against him. With some small moves to seize the control of the steel company, and a mouth that could deceive people, he actually persuaded some of Ting'an's conservative nobles to secretly support him. The result was that the non-existent steel company finally collapsed. The middle class's investments in the bank were fine, but the money that the nobles handed over to Lenevis was directly taken away by this swindler. Congressman Maynard, who made a small profit in the process, was successfully hated by the conservative nobles who suffered economic losses. Shah-Ir knew more details than what was recorded above. Baron Hoy's widow, Lady Sharon, made great efforts in this process and cooperated with Lenevis's actions, but she also faded out of sight as a deceived victim. In the end, the scammer returned all of Mrs. Sharon's money. Other people's money disappeared. Shah-Ir sorted out the messages and felt speechless. In the city of Ting'an, the conflict between the Conservative Party and the new party might be a bit too big. Although the Conservative Party's money was defrauded by Lenevis. But it is true that Councilman Maynard wants to use this bureau to cause trouble for the former Conservative mayor of Ting'an. In the eyes of the Conservatives, the mastermind could not be an ordinary fraudster, but must be an evil new party MP. It attacks their reputation, cheats them of their money, and insults their intelligence. This is a naked humiliation. Lanavarus, what a nasty swindler. I really hope that the kingdom's laws can judge him soon. Shah-Ir put down the documents in his hand and said seriously. If I'm not mistaken, he should be a thief path sequence 8 fraudster, or even a higher sequence. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to get the nobles of Ting'an to really take out their money in such a short time. Allison Gray's attitude towards this is just to wait and see. Even if the church's extraordinary people were dispatched, it would be useless. They might be able to capture the person, but they would never get the money back. Your father, Councilman Maynard, played a somewhat complicated role in this incident. Allison looked at Shah-Ir and said, I know that he saw that this might be a scam and wanted to use it to damage the reputation of the former mayor and help the middle class keep their family savings. What I didn't expect was that Lenevis could actually trick those nobles into giving up some of the money. What else could Shah-Ir say? The trickster plus the witch of joy plus 008 is so terrifying. In order to intensify party conflicts, they finally stopped resorting to brutal assassinations. Is this why you seduced Lenevis's fiancé? Allison said as she took out another report and pointed at an inconspicuous place in it and asked. They're even going to check this. No, what do you mean by seducing? As Shah-Ir spoke, the shadow behind him shook. If it's not seduction, then what is it, coercion or inducement? Allison glanced at the restless shadow on the ground and smiled. It's called mutual attraction. Besides, the Storm Church prohibits premarital sex. Shah-Ir lay back and blended into the shadow behind him, feeling as comfortable as a hammock. You are wrong. Allison shook her head. Did I say something wrong? Shah-Ir poked his head out from the shadows. Whether it was the Church of Night or the Church of Steam and Mechanics, there were actually no strict restrictions on premarital behavior. Only the Church of Storms placed more emphasis on it. He remembered it correctly. The Storm Church only prohibits premarital sex for women, not men. In our church, men and women are equal, and neither is prohibited. Allison said this lightly, throwing the report back. Chapter 103 Please Die. Tuesday, September 4th. After completing his routine work as a clergyman, Shah said something to the priest beside him and then strolled on the streets of the North District. The living conditions in the North District are relatively good, and the streets are bustling with people, full of life and vigor. Shah walked among the crowd, strolling with a smile and admiring everything around him. Suddenly, he lowered his head. A little girl selling flowers ran up to him and stuffed a bouquet of flowers into his hands. Shah was stunned for a moment, then took the flowers with a smile. Before he could say hello, the flower girl had already run away happily, turning back and waving at him as she ran. Don't go. Shah called the little girl with amusement. The little girl who was buying flowers stopped and looked back at him. Why are you running? I haven't paid yet. Shah walked over and smiled. No need, just consider it a gift from me. The little girl smiled embarrassedly and shook her head. Why did you send me? Shah asked in confusion. Because my sister said you look very pretty when you smile, and I like you. The little girl selling flowers tilted her head, blinked and said. But I'm not a good person. Shah raised his arms and saw the clerical robe on his body. He felt that this garment was truly a divine garment. Where's your sister? Shah looked at the flowers in his hand and asked. It's the sister selling flowers over there. She said you don't look like a bad person, and she also said you look really good when you smile. The little girl selling flowers pointed to a stall not far away and said. Shah looked in the direction the little girl pointed and saw a beautiful young girl standing in front of the stall, smiling and nodding at him. Shah also nodded, then looked down at the little girl. The little girl tilted her head back, blinking her big eyes, full of innocence. Isn't she your biological sister? Shah thought of something and suddenly felt flattered. No, but she is very nice to me and often buys me food. The little girl shook her head. Did you buy the flowers you gave me? Shah looked a little unnatural. Well, I bought it with the money I earned from selling flowers. The little flower girl nodded. At this moment, Shah felt like he deserved to die. Money from selling flowers? He asked uncertainly. Yes, I sell flowers here every day. I don't make much money, but I cherish it very much. The little flower girl nodded seriously. Are you helping that sister sell flowers? Shah understood a little. No, I have my own flowers too, and I sell them myself. The little flower girl shook her head. You're a florist, and she's also a florist. Shah blinked and pointed at the flower girl. He was a little confused about the current situation. Yes, she also sells flowers. She also taught me how to sell flowers. The little flower girl looked at the flower girl, nodded and said. Isn't she afraid that you will steal her business? Shah was confused. Is that girl so kind? No, she's a very nice person, and the flowers we sell are all different. The little girl selling flowers said with a giggle. No, the same. Shah looked at the little girl. Could it be that one was selling roses and the other was selling wild flowers? Her flowers are real, mine are fake. The little flower girl smiled, and she leaned close to Shah's ear and whispered mysteriously. Fake. Shah looked at the little girl in surprise. It must be very difficult to fake it, right? You see, her flowers are real, but mine are all made by me. The little girl pointed to the flower stall and said. So is the gift you gave me real or fake? Shah looked at the flowers in his hand. He must be a Beander, right? He couldn't even tell the difference between a real flower and a fake one. Of course it's real. Even though I bought it with the money from selling flowers, I didn't lie to you. The little girl selling flowers blinked and smiled slyly. Then I still deserve to die. Shah suppressed his complicated emotions. His curiosity took over. How did you make the flowers? Look, I picked these up and put them together to make a bouquet of flowers. The flower girl took out a small cloth bag from her pocket and opened it to reveal some petals and leaves. Shah-Ir was silent. He reached out and touched the little girl's head, and the little girl lowered her head shyly. "Did anyone buy your flowers?" he asked softly. "Of course. Although the flowers I sell are fake, many people still like my flowers." The little girl selling flowers puffed out her chest and said proudly, "Look, this flower is made of rose petals, and this flower is made of daisies." She opened the small cloth bag she was carrying and showed it. "Look, isn't it beautiful?" She took out a fake flower, handed it to Shah-Ir and smiled. "Yeah, it's beautiful, you're really amazing." Shah-Ir tried hard to smile. The flower girl smiled happily, revealing her missing front tooth. "You gave me flowers, so I'll give you a gift." Shah-Ir's smile became natural. "Really? What's the gift?" The little girl selling flowers has bright eyes and is full of anticipation. "What do you want?" Shale inquired. The flower girl tilted her head, thought for a moment and said, I want a literacy book. Can I?" She seemed to be thinking. After a while, her eyes suddenly lit up and she excitedly grabbed Shah-Ir's hand and said, "Doesn't the Church of Night have free night school?" Shah-Ir looked at the little girl and asked, I have to sell flowers during the day and help with housework at night, so I don't have time to go to night school." The little flower girl's eyes dimmed and she said, "I see." Shah-Ir spoke softly, thinking about how to properly solve this problem. "It doesn't matter if I can't read. I can go and listen to stories told by people who can read." The little girl selling flowers lowered her head and said a little disappointedly, "Don't be disappointed. Don't you want a literacy book? I'll take you there." Shah-Ir reached out and touched the little girl selling flowers' head. "Really? Thank you. You're such a nice person." The little girl selling flowers raised her head, her eyes sparkling. "May I have your name?" Shah-Ir looked at the little girl and asked. "My name is Rebecca, and my sisters call me Becca." The little flower girl answered happily. "Becca wants to go to school." Shah-Ir looked at the little girl and asked. Only then did he realize that some places in the North District were the same as those in the East District. "I want to, but..." Becca's eyes sparkled, but she was hesitant. "Is your family in trouble?" Shah-Ir looked at the little girl and asked. "Well, it's difficult at home." Becca nodded slightly, her voice a little low. "Don't worry, you'll have a chance to study after a while. Not only you, many people will have the opportunity." Shah-Ir assured the little girl. "Really? You're not lying to me, are you?" A glimmer of anticipation flashed in the eyes of Becca, the little flower girl. "I swear to the goddess that your wish will come true." Shah-Ir drew a crimson moon on his chest. Frankly speaking, he was not that moved even when Kazanamu wanted to give him the calamity trait. "So, Lieutenant General Hurricane, I need money to open a school, please die." Chapter 104 God's Pigeon. Wednesday, September 5th. Shah-Ir received news that Vice Admiral Hurricane Chi-Lingos had infiltrated Backland. Because of the reports from Hugh Dilcha and Furs Wall, almost all the official law enforcement teams got the news. The Church of Night certainly took action and strengthened its inspection work in each diocese. Shah-Ir is also in this team, but he took the initiative to work overtime. It is understandable that young Nighthawks are eager for merit and newly promoted Sequence 7s want to prove their strength. Hillston area. The residence of Baron Grimire. Through the faceless man's extraordinary ability, Chi-Lingos transformed himself into the appearance of Baron Grimire and mocked the noble's strange accent and the pronunciation of some specific words. A baron who is burdened with a lot of foreign debts and can't even afford to hire security personnel, just for the so-called respectability, actually keeps 17 or 18 servants to serve him. What a stupid nobleman. While spraying perfume on himself, Chi-Lingos taunted the noble whose neck was broken on the ground. Backland, Queens, Duke Negan's mansion. As Zillingus, disguised as Baron Grimire, was walking towards the banquet hall, he happened to pass by the elegant and quiet Miss Hall. "Hello, Miss Hall, you are the most dazzling jewel of this ball." Chi Lingos imitated Baron Grimmire's personal habits, exchanged a few pleasantries, and then left, intending to continue approaching his assassination target. Audrey stopped and frowned. When did Baron Grimmire become so confident in front of her? Shouldn't he, not daring to look her in the face, be secretly observing her? There was also a problem with the smell of his perfume. Although it was the same brand, the traditional aristocratic habit was to spray perfume a few hours before a banquet, so that the rich top and middle notes of the perfume would dissipate before the banquet, leaving behind a pure and light base note of musk. Why is his perfume so strong? It's like he just put on perfume. He is so unsophisticated that he is just like a nouveau riche with no background. There is something wrong with this Baron. Audrey's eyes narrowed. She seemed to have heard of the ability of disguise. At the tarot meeting, Mr. the Hanged Man said that creeping hunger has the ability to change a person's appearance. Hurricane Lieutenant General. Audrey was a little unsure. It couldn't be such a coincidence, right? No matter what, I'll go remind Dad first, but how should I explain it? The blonde girl was a little confused, and then her eyes lit up. Mr. Angel said that if you encounter a problem that cannot be solved, reporting it to the church might be a good idea. Audrey turned to Duke Negan's small prayer room, closed the door, looked at the symbol of the Lord of the Storm, and then found a corner to pray to Mr. Fool. O fool who does not belong to this era, you are the mysterious master above the gray fog, the yellow and black king who controls good luck. I pray for your attention and your listening. I discovered Baron Grimmire's abnormal behavior at the dinner party hosted by Duke Negan. I am worried that he is disguised as Keelingos. Please help me pass the message to Mr. Hanged Man and ask him to report it to the Church of Storms. After Audrey finished praying, she waited nervously, and after a while, she heard the voice of the Fool. I see. Gray fog space. Klein the Fool thought about it and forwarded Miss Justice's prayer to the Hanged Man and Mr. Angel. There was only so much he could do at the moment. I can still write to Mr. Azek. Klein thought this was a good idea and returned to the real space to write the letter. North District. While walking along the Tussock River, Shah-Ira received a message from Mr. Fool. Chi Lingos is suspected to have appeared at Duke Negan's ball. It's about time I go home. Shah-Ira changed direction and continued to move forward slowly. By the way, he nodded and said hello to an old man who was passing by. He was wearing a black robe embroidered with a storm symbol. Holy Wind Cathedral, Cherwood District. Alger was somewhat happy to hear the news about Chi Lingos. The traitors of the Church of the Storm want to get close to Duke Negan, an important believer of the Church of the Storm, with ill intentions. This matter must be reported to the Storm Church, the Archbishop of Backland Diocese, His Excellency, Singer of God, Ace Snake. Alger suppressed his surprise and went to report. Duke Negan's mansion. Chi Lingos stood at the railing on the second floor, looking at the men and women dancing on the dance floor. His gaze did not linger on the ladies in gorgeous clothes. Instead, he was staring at Duke Negan, who was chasing one beautiful figure after another with his eyes. Assassinate such a big shot. Just thinking about it made Chi Lingos so excited that he wanted to pull up the flag. If the assassination is successful, his reputation will spread throughout the 5 seas, surpassing the 4 pirate kings, and he will also get a mysterious playing card made by Emperor Russell. As long as he completes this order, he will have everything and a bright future is beckoning him. Duke Negan, please die. Chi Lingos pressed his right palm, creating a strong wind that blew out the candle in the crystal lamp. Then a series of wind blades flew over and knocked down the hanging crystal chandelier. Amid the huge roar, the ladies and girls below burst into screams. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Keelingos switched to the soul being grazed in, creeping hunger, and pierced the mind with a shot, injuring the Beander who was protecting Duke Negan. Keelingos jumped off the railing and flew towards Duke Negan like an eagle in the darkness. Snort. Captivity. Although Duke Negan was somewhat panicked, he was also a judge of the Arbitrator Pathway Sequence 6. He raised his hand and waved forward, creating an invisible barrier that blocked Keelingos' body. After Keelingos switched souls and used the Nightmare's ability to drag people into dreams, to trick Duke Negan into using a set of skills. His right hand, wrapped in a high-speed spinning gust of wind, stabbed towards Duke Negan. No illegal attacks allowed here. Duke Negan was tricked and failed to react in time, so he could only make broad laws. Keelingo's attack was restricted by the rules and its speed was reduced, giving Duke Negan time to react. He failed to kill him with one blow and instead injured Duke Negan's back. At this time, the Loan nobles present, such as the extraordinary guards of Earl Hall and others, also rushed over, including some extraordinary people from the Night Passage. The dark environment did not pose any obstacle to them, and they easily locked onto Duke Negan, who was about to finish him off. If the attack misses, flee thousands of miles away. Keelingos did not hesitate. He pretended to attack the nobles that the guards needed to protect, then a strong wind wrapped around his body, broke the glass, and glided out with the help of the wind, running towards the municipal park. He took 2 more steps and turned towards the Tussock River. After a while, a strong wind blew up, and the Singer of God, Ace Snake, with several, made in Punisher, frowned at the glass that Keelingos had broken, and then hurried in to check on the injured Duke Negan. Alger's face looked grim. He had done his best, so how come he was still a step late? Chapter 105, Silencing the Witness. Keelingos thought very well. He first passed through a park, crossed a forest and an artificial lake, then pretended to jump into the Tussock River, and finally blended into Backland's prosperous Hillston district. However, as soon as he entered the forest, he was surrounded by a group of huge human-shaped skeletons. Hundreds of skeleton giants stared at Keelingos and stretched out their arms together. An indescribable chill enveloped Keelingos's body, and his life was extinguished like a candle in the wind. When Shah-Ir walked over here, he happened to see a completely disintegrated corpse. Between the rotten flesh and the white bones, a blue light flickered. That was the extraordinary characteristic of a Sequence 6C dependent. He waved his hand, and the shadow on the ground rolled up, wrapping up the emerging sea dweller's characteristics and the empty and lifeless eyeball that fell to the ground. The center of the eyeball seemed to be wrapped by a strong wind, and the characteristics combined with the body tissue to become a sealed item. It is better to arrive at the right time than to arrive early. Shah-Ir hung the Eye of the Wind-Loving One around his waist, and then the shadows under his feet seemed to come alive, transforming into special shadow servants, using the skeletons on the ground as support and wearing the rotten meat on the ground as clothes. Son of Death, Isaac Eggers was able to help get rid of Vice Admiral Hurricane, which saved Shah-Ir the trouble of putting on a hood and transforming into a shadow hunter. It is not impossible to cheat with skills, block vision, use shadow stealth, and kill Vice Admiral Hurricane instantly. But it would be difficult to write a mission report to the Church of Darkness in that way. Now, if we pick up the bodies, the report will be much easier to write. Shah-Ir turned around, took his followers, blended into the shadows, and returned to St. Samuel Church to submit the task. After all, it's a good deal to pick up a household item, so there's nothing shameful about it. 1 minute after Shah-Ir, the Singer of God, once again came to this piece of artificial amber with a strong wind. The crimson light was reflected in his eyes, and the scene that had happened before began to replay on the water surface. The replay of the scene was blocked by a cold force. This storm brother could only conclude that a high sequence from the path of the god of death had ambushed Keelingos here. Keelingos' body was most likely taken away by the other party's men. Alger ran over in a hurry, and looking at the solemn expression of the archbishop, his mood also became heavy. Or did he let Keelingos escape? Are you sure you didn't tell anyone else? Singer of God, Ace Snake frowned and looked at Alger. I'm sure. I reported the intelligence as soon as possible. Alger lowered his head in fear, but still cursed in his heart, if it weren't for this archbishop, who had nothing to do. How could he waste time strolling along the Tussock River? What big shot wouldn't stay in the church instead of wandering around along the Tussock River like nothing happened? Keelingos was taken away by a high-sequence person from the Death God path. You continue to track in this direction. A silver light flashed in Ace Snake's eyes. He certainly knew the high sequence of the death path, but the aura was totally different. The reason why the other party would attack a pirate vice admiral was also very suspicious. Is this to cover up something? Or is it to silence someone? High sequence of the death path. The spiritual cult. Alger was a little confused as to when Chi Lingos had become friends with the spiritual cult, but he quickly nodded his head and accepted the order. He decided to continue investigating. As long as there was still a glimmer of hope, he didn't want to give up. Keelingus may be dead. If we can find his body, we may be able to learn more. The Singer of God observed that Alger was indeed sorry about Keelingos's escape, so he told Alger. News of Keelingos' possible death. Alger's pupils contracted. How could someone lock onto Chi Lingos's position so accurately? Is it true that I am not the only one who knows about Miss Justice? Could it be an angel? This high-sequence strongman of the death path. Mr. Hanged Man was a little unsure. A lounge in Duke Negan's mansion. Audrey was waiting for news with her mother and brother. Lord Hall came back, and Lady Catherine asked her husband, "How is Duke Negan's injury?" Fortunately, it's not a fatal injury. Duke Negan himself is a powerful Beander, and the Church of the Storm has plenty of experience in treating injuries caused by wind-loving ones. Earl Hall brought some pretty good news. Dad, I actually noticed something was wrong with Baron Gramil, but I wasn't sure at the time. Audrey looked at Earl Hall with some regret and said, she could have told her father about her doubts, but because of her interactions with the angels at the Tarot Club, she was psychologically a little insecure about this anomaly. In the end, she treated herself as an ordinary noble lady and did not voice her doubts, but waited for Mr. Fool's confirmation and support. Audrey, you don't have to blame yourself. This is not your fault. Chi Lingos was able to sneak in without being seen by so many Beyonders. It's remarkable that you even had some doubts. Earl Hall himself did think so. It was already remarkable that his daughter could detect some clues in advance, and it was normal that she could not be sure. Who could have thought that a pirate general would sneak into a gathering of nobles and assassinate a big shot like Duke Negan? Count Hall wanted to continue to comfort his daughter when a man in a black windbreaker knocked on the door and walked in, whispering something in his ear. Earl Hall was suddenly enlightened, then became confused. The matter was still a little difficult to explain. Dad, what happened? Audrey felt that her father's expression told a story. Keelingos' body was found by the Beander of the Church of Evernight. Lord Hall said to his family. A body? Hibbert, Earl Hall's eldest son, asked back with some confusion. Yes, we don't know who the murderer is yet. We only know that a Beander from the Church of Evernight who was passing by happened to find Chi Lingos' body that had been carelessly discarded. Earl Hall was also somewhat helpless. Vice Admiral Hurricane was a somewhat famous extraordinary person. He had originally escaped, but ended up dying like a stray cat on the side of the road. The timing was also very good, as it happened to be the short period of time when Chi Lingos' assassination attempt failed and he chose to escape. What the other party did felt a bit like killing to silence the witness, just like casually recycling a chess piece that had lost its usefulness. If this is true, then the assassination of Duke Negan may not be that simple. The Church may be able to investigate the truth. Hibbert analyzed with a calm look. Because he had performed poorly in the previous chaos, he now wanted to restore his image in front of his father. He knew that the Church of Night had the ability to make the dead speak. Disaster. Earl Hall shook his head. He had no complaints about his eldest son's performance. Panic was a normal reaction. Now he just explained patiently. If a corpse would reveal the secret, that terrifying Beander or some secret organization would not have left a corpse behind. They planned it very carefully. Chi Lingos' death might have been planned long ago, regardless of whether his assassination was successful or not. Earl Hall gave a fairly correct judgment based on his own experience. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description. Chapter 106 The Nightmare That Cannot Be Escaped. Backland, North District. Before Shal-Ir returned to St. Samuel's Cathedral, he was blocked on the road by the singer of God who came sooner or later. The old man glanced at the eye of wind, a characteristic of those who are favored by the wind hanging under Shal-Ir's windbreaker, as well as the obviously wider shadow behind him, and his silver eyes became sharp. When did the Church of Darkness begin to train secret praying people? The singer of God looked at the black and red clergyman on Shal-Ir's body, temporarily suppressed his impulse, and did not take direct action. I'm the only one at the moment. Compared to the secret praying people, the church has other better options. Shal-Ir looked calmly at the demigod flying in the air. If it wasn't at night, this would have been a serious violation of the church's principle of mystery and confidentiality. What? The church makes the rules. This is the Archbishop of the Church of the Storm. That's fine. Is the body you are dragging Keelingos? The singer of God said as he pressed lightly. A gust of wind ruffled the shadow under Shal-Ir's feet, revealing the corpse wrapped in the shadow. I think so, although I didn't see creeping hunger. Shal-Ir wanted to piece the pieces of flesh on Keelingos' face back together, but he was worried that the old man in front of him would not be able to accept this kind of flesh and blood art. What did you see? Although the singer of God was unhappy, he did not take back the seal made from the extraordinary characteristics of Vice Admiral Hurricane, but only asked for specific details. I heard some noises, and when I went to check, he was already a dead body. Shal-Ir said he saw nothing. The singer of God narrowed his eyes and felt that this was very reasonable. It would be abnormal if Shal-Ir could see it. At this time, figures walked out from the surrounding darkness. The Archbishop of the Church of the Storm took a look at these Nighthawks and left. What's going on here? Daily Simone walked up to Shal-Ir and asked. She was accompanied by some members of the Nighthawks. It's nothing serious. Found a body. Shal-Ir smiled at Daily. Whose body? Daily asked, looking at Shal-Ir thoughtfully. Lieutenant General Hurricane. As Shal-Ir spoke, he waved his hand and fanned himself. The eye of wind lit up, and a breeze blew up his hair and clothes, making him look very energetic. The other Nighthawks were shocked, and at the same time thought that he was a bit pretentious. 10,000 pounds is not a big deal. Where did you pick it up? Daly gave Shal-Ir a displeased look and signaled the Nighthawks behind her to retreat. Shal-Ir had completed the work of so many people by himself. The most infuriating thing was that this guy didn't look like a wolf fox at all. Let me think, it's the artificial lake at the border of the North Side and Queens. Shal-Ir and Daly explained as they walked towards St. Samuel's Cathedral. After returning to church, he went straight to Bishop Electra. Bishop Electra had received the news by this time, and he didn't know how to evaluate Shal-I's luck. Shal-I returned to the West End, and he didn't want to take a detour, so he had to pass through Queens. He was also a listener, and was more sensitive to the surrounding environment. With the combination of various factors, he picked up a small leak. Mr. Maynard, you always seem to be able to. Bishop Electra didn't know what to say. After all, he was like this when he was a night watchman. What kind of job was he in? It is almost inevitable that you will see something. Mr. Bishop, let's put these red tape aside for now. Is this my trophy? Shal-Ir took out the eye of wind hanging from his waist. In order not to hand it over, he deliberately guided the unformed Beander characteristics into a sealed item. Of course, you are lucky. Bishop Electra's tone was a bit complicated. He obviously looked down on the high-sequence Death Path Master and was too lazy to wait for the Beander characteristics to emerge so that Shal-Ir could take advantage of the opportunity. Then Vice Admiral Hurricane has a bounty of 10,000 pounds in Loan, and there are bounties in other countries. Adding up everything, the total bounty is close to 20,000 pounds. As Shal-Ir spoke, his eyes moved flexibly. Of course it's yours too, as long as you're not afraid that the high-sequence person from the death path will cause you trouble. Bishop Electra also signaled with her eyes. Then let the church help me deal with it. I hope the church will use these 20,000 lists to strengthen the construction of free night schools so that more children who are eager for knowledge can receive a certain education. Considering that some families have difficulties in finding time for their children even at night, I hope to use this money to set up certain scholarships or corresponding subsidies to provide some help to those in need. Shah Iyer spoke without hesitation. This amount of money is equivalent to nearly 5 million, which is enough to improve the basic education in a region. Mr. Maynard, you have surprised me again. May I know why you do this? Bishop Electra was stunned. He didn't expect that Shah Iyer didn't leave any for him. Yesterday a little girl gave me a flower with the money she earned herself. I want to give her a flower in return. Shah Iyer drew a crimson moon on his chest. If someone gives him a gift, he will of course give something in return. Praise the goddess. The bishop was delighted and drew a crimson moon on his chest. Praise the goddess. Shah Iyer was also relieved. All he did was move the Keelingos household to the church in the North District, and they thought he was losing out. What a lovely bunch of guys. Hand over the body to the Church of Night. Shah Iyer returned to his residence, closed the room and sat on a chair. He wondered whether he should report to Mr. Fool, but considering that Mr. Fool liked mystery, he decided to reduce communication and let Mr. Fool continue to immerse himself in this mystery. Ting'an City. A huge dream maze has been woven. Natural disaster. Shah Iyer stayed in the miracle city in his dream, watching Dun Smith, the nightmare demon, accidentally break into his dream, and then leave without noticing. He held the sealed artifact 008 in his hand and wrote on it, "This is an inescapable nightmare. Only fools can survive it." Inside the house with red bacon on the outskirts of Ting'an. Ince Zhangwil put down the ordinary feather pen in his hand and looked at the story he had written. Lanuis originally did not intend to hold an evil ceremony to pray for the true creator to give birth to an offspring, but because of John. Under pressure from Counselor Maynard and Night Watchman Bennett Maynard, he decided to make Ting'an the city of Ting'an for the stupidity of this father and son. Pay the price. Quote, Lenevis bewitched Sequence 7 psychiatrist Hood Eugen. He sacrificed his fiancée, intending to use this woman as a carrier to breed the offspring of the true creator. Lenevers's ritual had no chance of success, but the kind-hearted Ince Zhangwil secretly provided help. He separated half of the characteristics of the descendants of the god of death that he had collected and transplanted them into Megos in advance, helping this woman to successfully complete the intercourse with the projection of the god. Chapter 107 Inches The Coming of the Son of God. Megos, who was in a semi-comatose state, mistook the projection of the evil god for the Night Watcher. Under the catalysis of the accumulated resentment in the factory area and the special environment of oppressive darkness, she successfully conceived the offspring of the true creator. This evil god may have noticed the coincidence, but for whatever reason, he obviously had no objection. On the contrary, they were very cooperative. Lenevers and Madame Sharon teamed up to cause a huge fraud case in Ting'an City. Ting'an City's Nighthawks also participated in the investigation. They also came into contact with Megos, the magical Klein Moretti. Because of the spiritual reminder. I have not carefully observed Megos's condition through spiritual means. For some reason, Leonard, who was hiding the secret, did not carefully observe this woman who had little to do with the fraud case. Perhaps it was because they had heard more or less about the relationship between this woman and their colleague and did not want to embarrass her too much. The evil child that Megos is carrying is very healthy. The Nighthawks investigation has caused the fetus to fall into a deeper sleep to hide its own breath. Megos's mental state has become abnormal due to the influence of the fetus. She instinctively feels anxious and uneasy. She didn't know how to relieve her anxiety. Pregnancy itself was not something she expected. She could only rely on her instincts and choose a place that made her feel at ease. Her inspiration also gave her some enlightenment. When the night watchmen were around, the baby in her belly would always be exceptionally quiet. Megos came to Zotland Street and entered the Blackthorn Security Company, intending to seek some help. The fetus in her body was in a critical stage of gestation, and it was only drawing the mother's power to speed up its own gestation, and was unable to stop her actions in time. Dunsmith made arrangements in time. After being reminded by several team members, he decided to lead Megos into the Chinese Gate and fight with the special terrain there. This stimulated the offspring of the gods in Megos's body, and it absorbed its mother's life more frantically, even forcibly absorbing some of the characteristics of the god of death, just to be able to give birth earlier. The environment of the Chinese Gate has suppressed the offspring of the evil god, but the crazy offspring of the evil god also has divinity. The offspring of the death god who absorbed the characteristics of the death god is not perfect, but it is already quite terrifying. Under the joint efforts of Tinghan Market Night Watchers and various seals, the offspring of the gods were expelled, the seal behind the Chinese Gate was destroyed, the power of Saint Selena's ashes was consumed, and the Night Watchers of the Black Taboo Security Company. It is even more impossible to survive a battle involving divinity. Ince Zangwil is the gatekeeper of the death path at Sequence 5 and the former Archbishop of the Church of Evernight. He has enough ability to enter the unmanned Chinese Gate, fulfill his request, take Selena's ashes, and transfer to the night path at Sequence 4, the Night Watcher. This is an internal struggle among the Night Watchmen of the Church of Evernight. It will not affect ordinary people in Tinghan City. Ince Zangwil has proven his ability to the Church of the Evernight Goddess. The threshold of being half human and half god is not an obstacle for him. He just needs another chance. When Ince Zangwil wrote this, he exerted some force on his pale fingers, obviously thinking of his first failure in becoming a demigod, and the humiliation and unwillingness that belonged to other Nighthawks after his failure. I will prove myself, no matter what the cost. The middle-aged man, whose facial features were as deep as a statue, closed the notebook in his hand with force. His movements were solemn and serious. After all, this was a very heavy price to pay. Those who sacrificed were his former colleagues. The city of Tinghan seemed to be shrouded in a dreamy light and shadow. Zudaland Street, Blackthorn Security Company. Having been busy with so many things recently, it was a rare opportunity for him to have some free time. Klein was leisurely slacking off in the duty room. When he went to the reception desk to make himself a cup of coffee, he looked up and saw a visitor at the door. He saw a lady come in. She looked young, with blonde hair and blue eyes, a melancholy temperament, and delicate features. Although he couldn't remember who she was at the moment, Klein felt that he must have seen her before. The most eye-catching thing about her is her belly, which seems to be bulging. Who is this? Klein thought about it carefully and felt that she was a bit like Ms. Megosa. No, it was not a feeling, she was Ms. Megosa. After Klein figured this out, his expression became relaxed, and the image of the lady opposite him seemed to become more vivid. Ms. Megos, what can I do for you? Klein looked at Megos in confusion. When he saw her bulging belly, he was somewhat surprised and puzzled. This is. Maynard did it. Then we should go to Congressman Maynard. Or do you want to contact Maynard in Backland through us? Klein completely ignored the issue of time and naturally accepted Megos's belly, which looked like it was 8 or 9 months old. When Klein figured it out, Megos seemed to understand what she was here for. She smiled gently, touched her belly and smiled. I don't know why, I just want to come over for a walk. It's also good for pregnant women to exercise more. Klein became more relaxed. If there were no commissions, he would just continue to slack off. In an imaginary palace somewhere, the elf looked at everything on the mural and found it very interesting. He picked up the feather pen and started painting on the mural. Inside the Blackthorn Security Company, Klein, who was about to take his coffee, was suddenly stunned, as if he suddenly remembered something. It's only been 2 months. How come this lady's belly is so big? She looks like she's about to give birth. Klein felt a chill on his back for no apparent reason. He subconsciously tried to activate his spiritual vision, but thoughts, stronger than the last, flashed through his mind. You can't watch it, you will die. You can't watch it, you will die. You can't watch it, you will really die. Klein froze like a statue, not even noticing the coffee spilling out of his hand. It was as if he had just had a horrible nightmare and was just 1 step away from waking up. The Joker's spiritual intuition frantically reminds him that as long as he doesn't commit suicide, he won't die, and he should pretend that he didn't notice anything. Leon. Leonard, go inform the captain. Klein walked over to Leonard and said with a trembling voice. Leonard was confused at first, then he looked at Megos and his expression became horrified. Are you kidding me? Evil God, offspring. Chapter 108 Real Dream. Ms. Megos, please wait a moment and sit down and have a cup of tea first. Klein could only do his best to calm Megasaurus down, invite her to sit down, and provide her with attentive service. At the same time, he signaled with his eyes that Roshan, who wanted to come over to entertain Megasaurus, should leave quickly. Luo Shan pursed her lips, looked at Klein deeply, moved her lips, and finally turned away, tapping her chest 4 times, praying for Klein and the others, hoping that everything would be safe. Emperor Russell said in his diary that the Industrial Revolution he personally initiated would be the breeding ground for the advent of the evil god. Klein didn't really believe it at first, but now he had to believe it. The Megos in front of him was definitely not normal. He thought of the Aurora Society, Lenevis, and Psychiatrist. Klein even suspected that it might be the power of the evil god that had penetrated into the body of this lady through some mysterious ritual. Can't look directly at God, what should I do? He subconsciously held the 2 items in his pocket, one was the Yangan talisman, and the other was the Azak copper whistle. These 2 things gave him a little sense of security. Channy's gate, duty room. Leonard ran in and found Dunn immediately, saying with a short breath. Captain, we may be in big trouble. Don't worry, what happened? Dunn looked at Leonard's panic, then stood up, his eyes firm and powerful. There may be some power inside Megos that is related to the evil god. Leonard briefly explained the situation. Now, we must immediately seek help from the Holy Temple. I hope the situation is not as bad as we think. Dunn realized the seriousness of the problem. He glanced at Luo Yao. The lady understood and walked to the telegraph to send a message to the Holy Temple of the Church of Night for help. Captain, she's too dangerous. We have to find a way. Klein may not be able to hold out that long. Leonard prepared some words of advice for Dunn. I suggest that we lead her into the Channy's gate, just like we rescued old Neil last time. The Silent Fry also spoke at this time. This may be something we have to face, but I will do my best to protect your safety. Fry, go to Channy's gate and inform old Neil and the others to be ready for battle. Leonard, come with me to support Klein. We need to find a way to lead Megos into the Channy's gate. Dunn made a quick decision, walked out of the underground passage and came to the reception room above. After some probing, Klein discovered that Megos was very interested in the matter of shale. He tried his best to use the topic of shale as bait to appease the lady's emotions. That's what I hope for, too. He'll like this kid, won't he? Megos's condition had become somewhat abnormal. Her skin began to dry, and her body temperature began to drop, but she herself did not notice anything and was looking at the ring on her hand with gentle eyes. When Dunn and Leonard came up, they couldn't help but swallow their saliva when they saw Megos, whose hair was still gray. Ma'am, if you want Maynard, you can send him a telegram. We have a telegraph here. We can directly contact Maynard in Backland and tell him the good news. Dunn said in a gentle and steady tone as much as possible. Really? That's really great. As expected, Megos fell for it and followed the 3 people down the underground passage. As they approached the Channy's gate, the fetus, sleeping in Megos's body seemed to sense some danger. The state began to become unstable, and even began to absorb the characteristics of non-adjacent death paths. Megos was showing signs of losing control, but Klein was quick-witted and snatched the ring that Megos seemed to cherish very much. He used this ring to guide the out-of-control Megos into the interior of the Channy's gate. Obviously, I'm not the father of the child, so why should I help Sha'ir solve the girl's problem? The moment Channis's door closed, he looked at the flesh and blood on Megos's face that looked like porcelain falling off. Her body was becoming increasingly drier, while the skin on her belly began to swell like a wriggling tumor, as if something was eager to crawl out from inside. However, the power of the Chinese gate was suppressing Megos and the fetus in her body. Team leader. Klein and Leonard shouted to Dunn. In this situation, they could no longer wait for the support from the Holy Temple to arrive. Dunn, let's get started. Old Neil, who had made simple arrangements behind the Chinese gate in advance, shouted to Dunn. There was no trace of retreat in the eyes of this night watchman who was about to retire. Get ready to fight. Don't be nervous. I will stand in front of you. We are protecting Tingen. Dunn stretched out his hand toward Megos, and the environment inside the Chinese gate became dim. The hem of the black clothes was lifted up, and countless black, cold, and slippery threads were swaying in the air, sweeping towards Megos. In such a specific place, with the cooperation of a specific ritual, with the advantages of this battle, and with the support of the high-level characteristics of the same sequence, the strength that Dunn can exert has far surpassed the level of Sequence 7. You lied to me. Don't you dare hurt my child. Megos's body was swept by tentacle-like black threads. She was powerless to struggle or resist, but she tore open her stomach, allowing the monster in her stomach to be born prematurely, bathed in her mother's blood. Wow! The first cry of a newborn baby is blasphemy. The sharp explosion was like a heavy hammer, causing the ears of the night watchman present to bleed. The dream maze that shrouds the city of Tingen, the illusory city of miracles, the dreamlike hall of honesty. Shah Iyer controls the direction of the story in the dream maze by manipulating the murals on both sides. Megos, and, descendant of the evil god, were both suppressed by the gate of Chinese. In addition, the descendant of the evil god absorbed some of the characteristics of the god of death in his madness, and were also susceptible to the demigod characteristics of the gate of Chinese, that is, the path of night. Dunn Smith even displayed some of the combat power of a Sequence 5, being able to control the non-divine Megos with the power of the nightmare. Leonard Mitchell chose to activate the seal that best suited him, corresponding to the thief's path, Sequence 6 Fire Thief. The third-level seal of Vascular Thief. However, it is somewhat difficult for this level 3 sealed object to overcome the gaps in multiple hard conditions such as status, divinity, sequence, mysterious knowledge, etc. and steal the extraordinary abilities of the offspring of the evil god. After failing several times, this poet classmate no longer had any hope and completely forgot that he was carrying an old man with him. Chapter 109 God says, be honest. What kind of rubbish seal is this that is so difficult to use? After Leonard tried several times, he finally succeeded once, but he only stole some insignificant extraordinary abilities. The sealed object 30217, the psychic's mirror, in Cohen's hand actually had a certain impact on the offspring of the evil god. Klein looked at Dunn, who was trying his best to restrain the offspring of the evil god. He gritted his teeth. As a Sequence 8, it was difficult for him to participate in this battle. Klein wanted to take the sealed artifact 30782, the mutated Sun Holy Emblem, but was stopped by the experienced Old Neil. Although this level 3 seal of the Sun Path is powerful, the compatibility between the Sun Path and the Dark Path is very poor. If Klein uses this seal inside the Chinese gate, it will weaken the Chinese gate and its suppression of the descendants of the evil god. When he wanted to use other seals, the seals that could be helpful on the battlefield had already been taken by other Nighthawks. Klein had no choice but to retreat temporarily and take over from his companions who were using the seals according to the situation. Although the offspring of the evil god was powerful, it was still not fully developed. Under the suppression of the Chinese gate, the Nighthawks paid a huge sacrifice but still succeeded in solving it. The entire interior of Chinese gate was in a mess. The lingering chill dissipated, as if I had suffered a severe blow. Klein stood in the foggy and chaotic field, looking at the captain and his companions who had fallen beside him. Some of these Nighthawks died due to spiritual overdraft, such as Dunn and Old Neil. Some fell into coma due to the mental shock before the evil god's offspring were expelled, such as Leonard and Fry. Others were killed by the evil god's offspring, and there were bite marks on their bodies. Klein relied on the mental strength he had developed from years of suicidal activities to hold on to the final blow and not be knocked unconscious. When he wanted to check on the status of his teammates, the gate of Channy's suddenly opened automatically. Klein was startled and looked in the direction of the door. A man with dark blonde hair, pupils so blue that they looked like dark black, a high-nose bridge, tightly pursed lips, and facial features like a classical wax figure walked in. Klein didn't recognize who this person was at first, but when he noticed that the other person had a blind eye and was holding a feather pen in his hand, he finally remembered that he had seen the wanted poster for the other person in Dunn's office. Ince Zangwell, the former archbishop who defected from the Church of Night. Are there any fish that have escaped death? Let me end your suffering. Ince Zangwell adjusted to the environment behind the Channy's gate. Due to the lack of personnel to manage it and the consumption of the Channy's gate, this Sequence 5 gatekeeper quickly adapted to the pressure. He raised his hand and grabbed, and Klein's neck seemed to be grabbed by an invisible big hand, which was about to break Klein's neck. Ahem. Klein was powerless to struggle. The sacrifice of his teammates, the mental exhaustion, and the threat of death also made this usually gentle man show some signs of madness. He threw out the Yangan talisman that he was holding tightly in his hand and uttered a word in ancient Hermetic. Light. I want light. The golden glow bloomed from the thin gold sheet covered with mysterious patterns in his palm. The cold power on Klein's neck was driven away by the sunlight disk. The dazzling sunlight even illuminated the darkness inside the Channy's gate and turned into a small sun, attacking Ince Zangwell. How is that possible? Ince Zangwell obviously didn't expect that the low-sequence Klein would not use the low-level spells such as Sleep and Dream that are common in the Church of Evernight, but instead took out a high-level Yangan spell that could restrain him. The huge ball of light, carrying light and heat, rushed straight towards the Sequence 5 gatekeeper. Ince Zangwell didn't dare to take it head-on. He even felt the threat of death at this moment. Even if it is Sequence 5, if the whole body is roasted, it will still die. Boom! A huge explosion kicked up a cloud of dust. Klein looked at the smoke and dust raised by the explosion with a frown on his face. He covered his dizzy forehead, took a bottle of potion that could enhance his spiritual power for a short period of time, and then injected his spiritual power into the second, Yangan talisman, in his hand and threw it towards the smoke-filled area. Ince Zangwell, who had just consumed a large number of undead and escaped this time, felt a familiar breath coming again before he walked out of the smoke and dust of the explosion. His face instantly turned ugly. Who teaches Beyonders to use advanced talismans like this? He had no time to dodge. Even if a Sequence 5 Ocean Singer was here, he would not be able to outrun the light ball. He could only summon the mysterious bronze gate once again to block himself, using it as a buffer, and then use the feather pen in his hand to write quickly on the ground, hoping to avoid this impact. However, something unexpected happened. The sunlight that illuminated the darkness was so fierce, and the two consecutive Yangan spells seemed to dispel the dreams. A huge crack was blasted in the space, and the space began to collapse inch by inch. Ince Zangwell and Klein, who were closest to it, fell directly into it. They seemed to be traveling through the spirit world. Before their eyes were thick blocks of various colors. It seemed as if they had cut out layers and arrived at another level of space, falling into a giant dragon palace with ancient stone pillars. Where is this place? Somewhere in the spirit world. Ince Zangwell struggled to get up from the ground, his robe torn by the fierce ball of light, revealing his burned skin. That hurts. Is the intruder dead? Klein also propped up his head and thought so, but he heard several echoes in his ears. Where is this place? Somewhere in the spirit world. It hurts. Is the intruder dead? The two people's voices were heard in the hall, and the two people who had barely regained some rationality looked at each other blankly. I clearly didn't say anything. There's something wrong with this space. Where exactly is this place? Klein and Ince Zangwell's voices rang out at the same time. Although this mysterious place and strange scene gave rise to many doubts in people, the sudden changes and the enemies in front of them made the two of them unable to focus on the surrounding environment. I am seriously injured now. If this guy has other advanced spells, what should I do? Kill this kid first. Ince Zangwell's inner voice rang out. Damn it, the talisman has been used up. I don't know if Mr. Azek's copper whistle will work. Klein took out a somewhat cold copper whistle from his pocket, and then he heard the voice of his heart. The two men looked at each other again, and neither of them looked very happy. Chapter 110 Beware of the Audience. Klein panicked and blew his whistle quickly. Damn it, all my undead souls have been consumed, and there are no undead souls nearby that I can communicate with and control. We can't even open the door to the underworld here. Ince Zangwill's face looked very ugly. If he couldn't open the death gate, wasn't this a path to the god of death? I don't know what Mr. Azek's bones are. No. What am I thinking about? I can't think. After Klein blew the whistle, he quickly tried to find a way to control the sound of his inner voice. I don't know what you're talking about, but the gap between you and me cannot be made up by these things. Ince Zangwill glanced at Klein with disdain. Bondage. He spoke a powerful language of the dead, directly enslaving Klein's spirit through his flesh. Klein's hands uncontrollably grabbed his neck. This feeling was terrible, but it was difficult to resist. He seemed to have seen something, and his eyes became extremely terrified. Behind you. Ince Zangwill snorted coldly. He increased his control and directly ended Klein's life. Only then did he have time to carefully examine his surroundings. When he discovered that the murals on the left side of the palace contained scenes of himself, his face turned very ugly. How is this possible? Why am I on the mural? What on earth is this place? Ince Zangwill saw himself on the mural, holding an ordinary feather pen. He realized at this moment, where is 008? He should have looked for this feather pen first when he fell down. Why did he forget it? Poof! The dragon's tail pierced Ince Zangwill's chest like a sharp spear. Behind the former Archbishop of the Church of Darkness, a pair of pale golden eyes stared at the gatekeeper, indifferently. Ince Zangwill trembled, then fell to the ground helplessly, completely unaware of what had happened. Only Klein saw it more clearly. He saw the feather pen float up and gradually become illusory. A human figure gradually emerged from it, just like a dream descending from a fantasy world into reality. Sealed Object 008, after coming into contact with the message from the City of Miracles. Alisuhad, the Dragon of Nightmare, is an ancient dragon resurrected from the gods, from the mist of history, from the imaginary kingdom of fantasy. I was able to wake up in this era. This is a real surprise. Shah-Ior looked at the illusory dragon scales vaguely emerging on his arm, and made a sound that was not sure whether it was surprise or a sigh. Is it really a hacked account? However, his current identity is Alisuhad. I didn't expect this to attract your attention. Fool. Shah-Ior raised his head, looking upward, towards the deepest part of the fog of history. His golden pupils were vertical and cold, carrying the cruelty and greed of a predator. Complex and three-dimensional mysterious symbols emerged from the surrounding void, extending into the depths of the projection of the Dream Kingdom. Future. Above the gray fog, Klein, who had predicted his own afterlife through dream divination, was almost frightened to death by the word, fool. Family members, who understands? He just died inexplicably once, and then wanted to figure out what happened. As a result, he met Ince Zangwill, who was suspected to have been used by a certain existence to release or resurrect some kind of terrifying opponent. How could the other party be able to find his position in the past? How does he know I'm a fool? Could it be related to Sealed Object 008? Golden vertical pupils, gray hair, a slender dragon tail, and cold facial features, this is definitely not a human, right? He is related to the dragon. Combined with the special voices in the hall just now, the high-sequence extraordinary people in the audience. Klein's brain analyzed rapidly. He had experience of spying on the eternal blazing sun, so when he saw those illusory mysterious runes that had emerged, he was ready. He endured the headache and prepared to obtain mystical knowledge such as the audience path potion formula. Anyway, he just occupied it, and what he occupied was the past. No matter how powerful the opponent is, can he be more powerful than the eternal sun? Klein originally thought so, but suddenly, he found that his perspective became clearer, as if he was actually there. Something's wrong. Seeing the audience walking towards him not far away, If Klein was not in a spirit state and had no heart, he would have been frightened to have a heart attack. Am I not above the gray fog? Dream maze. Shah also didn't expect that Klein had so much leisure time. He had only died once during this period of time, and after being resurrected in the future, he immediately took the opportunity to watch the development of the plot later. The essence of dream divination is to let yourself enter the dream and get inspiration from the dream. How could such a polite dream occupy me, the nightmare dragon? Various mysterious symbols emerged from behind Shur's back and merged into the surrounding dream maze. The ability of the insider allows him to not be constrained by external influences. Then, Klein's dream maze established a certain connection with Mr. Fool's dream maze. Shur also appeared as a nightmare in Mr. Fool's dream divination, and also kindly helped to extend the time of the dream divination. If the goddess of night had not given Klein the dream blessing, Shah could now try to play with hypnosis in the dream. Unfortunately, the goddess of night did not leave any loopholes, and he didn't know who to guard against. He approached the fool, who was shrouded in gray mist, step by step. As he moved forward, the dream world began to shake, as if it would collapse at any time, and there was obviously still some distance between him and the fool. As if it felt that time was running out, the nightmare dragon stopped and looked at the fool who was being held in place by the sleep paralysis, and didn't know how to move, and said in pure dragon language, "Is this dream reaching its limit? We'll meet again, fool." Gray fog space. I was having a lucid dream, and dreamed about the horrifying part. I tried desperately to wake up, but I just couldn't. It was as if someone in the dream was pulling my fool. I saw that the horrifying thing finally stopped approaching me, and I realized that I was about to wake up, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. "We'll meet again, fool." It was clearly the language of dragons, and Klein hadn't studied it very hard yet, but he could understand it, as if it was a voice coming directly from his heart. As the dream shattered, Klein suddenly opened his eyes and heard a whisper in his ears again. "Be careful of the audience." Chapter 111. The end of Tingen's story. HHU Klein was panting heavily. He clearly didn't need to breathe, but he felt more relaxed this way. He looked at the ancient palace in front of him with somewhat dazed eyes. What exactly is that ancient palace? Dream world. If it is a dream, how many layers does that dream have? Why did the captain and others who died not die, but I died in my dream? That is a deep dream state. Does death there really mean death? Who is that mysterious man? What purpose did he achieve by using Ins Zangwill? What does it mean to be careful of your audience? A lot of doubts appeared in Klein's mind. He originally thought that this was a revenge action by Lenevis against Tingen City, but it turned out that the former archbishop of the church, Ins Zangwill, and the sealed artifact 008 were involved. Later, he thought that this was just a conspiracy by Ins Zangwill to become a demigod. Zangwill died, but the quill, sealed artifact 008, came back to life. This strange thing even made Klein think of the hidden sage who was revitalized. The other party was actually able to influence his dreams in reverse. This is obviously a complete conspiracy. The function of sealed artifact 008 is most likely related to manipulation. Ins Zangwill may have been influenced by the quill. The quill escaped the seal of the church by manipulating Ins. Ins then used the power of the church to try to seize the seal behind the Chinese gate, but everyone unknowingly fell into a compiled dream world. In the beginning, it wasn't Megosa who came to Blackthorn Security Company. I mistook her for Megosa. It was my subconscious that pushed the dream forward. Klein took a deep breath, still feeling a little scared when he thought about it. Only after he came above the gray fog did he notice some details. The dream was originally incomplete. The story of destroying the offspring of the evil god was made up by the Night Watchers. This is also why the captains who died at the hands of the evil god's offspring did not die. This is just a dream that is not real enough. The reason why it is a dream world instead of reality is perhaps to cover up some traces and try not to attract the attention of the Orthodox Church. The reason why Ins and I fell into that mysterious palace may be related to the two Yangan charms. The characteristics of the charms destroyed the stability of the dream. It may also be related to Ins Zangwill. We have discovered some of the truth hidden in the dream world, so if I die in the dream world, I am really dead. Ins Zangwill was also dealt with. Klein roughly deduced what happened. This made him a little unsure of what to say. What if he fainted along with Leonard and the others, or died in battle along with the captain? Doesn't he have to die? Just treat it as a nightmare. Ins Zangwill might still die in the end. Why didn't I faint? Why did I happen to have 2 Yangan charms at that time? Klein felt very uncomfortable. He felt that things shouldn't be like this. It's too late to say anything now. His body has been buried. Although he has resurrected from the dead, it is impossible for him to go back. The secrets of the gray fog space and the secret of resurrection after death cannot be explained. Why does he know I'm a fool? Does this have anything to do with mind reading? Does he know about this gray fog space? What do you mean by be careful with your audience? Klein's mind was full of questions. More importantly, he didn't know what he should do. To take revenge. Who can I seek revenge on? Ins may be dead. Seeking revenge on that mysterious being. Isn't this just asking for trouble? The problem that Crane had to consider was that he had no money because he had been buried once. When he climbed out of the coffin, he had only one set of clothes and the Azak copper whistle on his body, nothing else. The 2 Yangan talismans that were theoretically not consumed were also missing, probably having been recovered by Dunn and others. Tingen can't stay any longer. If the person or organization behind the scenes finds out that I'm not dead, not only will I be in trouble, but Melissa, Benson, the captain and the others might also be implicated. The other party didn't make much noise. It's obvious that they are still afraid of something. I want to go to a place where it's easier to hide myself and where the church is more powerful. Klein thought of Shell. Perhaps Backland would be a more suitable place. I heard that the archbishops of the 3 true churches in Backland are all saints. Backland should be very safe. Mr. Fool came up with the idea of going to a big city, walking around and taking a look. Time goes back to Tingen that night. Seeing that the Fool hung up on his dream encounter so quickly, Sha'ir was a little disappointed, but he was Mr. Fool after all, so what else could he do but pamper him? Sequence 1, I'm so weak it's funny. Sha'ir looked at the 2 corpses that were slowly being devoured by the dream world. He took action to erase all traces of the existence of the entire dream world, as well as anything that might bring him trouble. He created a virtual personality, which jumped through dreams and came to a room with red bacon, wearing clothes named Ins Zangwill. Before hiding, the Archangel glanced in a certain direction of Tingen. We are all Sequence 1's hiding from the 2 brothers. It's not easy for all of us, so no one should report anyone else. He said nothing and disappeared into the ocean of collective subconsciousness. Room with red chimney. Ins Zangwill, who was resting on the bed, slowly opened his eyes and said with a slight smile on his face. It's not that important whether a summoner like the gatekeeper is a demigod himself. He got up from the bed, walked to the window, and looked at the crimson moon in the sky in a daze. He is probably the most miserable Sequence 1 in history. Fortunately, he was not killed instantly by the god-dropped container, and he didn't know who to form an alliance with. Even after little Zaratul escaped, he knew to flirt with George III and Adam. It is better to rely on yourself than on others. Ins Zangwill snapped his fingers, and an ordinary feather pen automatically jumped and began to write. In that notebook, record the final contents. The ancient dragon has reappeared in the world. The real writer is behind the scenes. Only the simple and foolish can survive, while the smart ones often fall into deeper traps. Ins Zangwill has got what he has always wanted, and his future is bright. The story of Tingen City ends here. Chapter 112 Feet God of Luck, Service. The Fourth Age. City of Miracles. Sha'ir no longer continued to paint the various murals on both sides of the hall. Since the result is as expected, the process can be completed later. He began to retract the dark blue hair that was wrapped around the hall like a tentacle. Since there is a Sequence 1 in the future, it can play some role to some extent. The power that writers have to make their fantasies come true is very practical. Maybe I have to think of a way, otherwise, when the end of the world comes, I won't even have established the first Solomon Empire, or will have just established it. That's not good. As Shah-Ir thought about it, he left the city of miracles and followed the ocean of collective subconsciousness to the world in the book. After his influence, this place is basically filled with the lifestyle of the elves. Shah-Ir came to a palace decorated with shells, pearls, corals, gems, and other underwater-style ornaments. Siadas, wearing an ancient priest's attire, was studying various things from the future that she had taken down from the imagined Tingan city. You are worthy of being an elf. You are very capable in doing things. When I let you out next time, I will definitely reward you with a great amnesia spell. Shah-Ir stood silently behind Shah Tush, looking at this good head and thinking so. Shahtas was only interested in some small things and did not bring back the flush toilet to observe. Shah-Ir was relieved. Do you like these things? Shah-Ir asked as he looked at the pile of small items on the table and the futuristic-style long skirts popular in Tingan City that Shahtas was holding in her arms. I saw it and brought it back. Can you help me see which one looks good? Shahtas was a little surprised to see Shah-Ir coming back. She immediately changed out of her robe and put on a light blue dress. Does it look good? Siadas walked around Shah-Ir, then looked at him expectantly and asked. We could probably try a few more styles. As Shah-Ir spoke, he flipped his wrist and wind appeared out of thin air. The surrounding wind first turned into pieces of white paper, and then turned into various long skirts, colorful stockings, and pairs of high heels. Angels also need to combine work and rest. Since they don't have to save the world anyway, there's no need to rush. Lift your feet. Siadas had not expected that Shah-Ir could conjure up such a thing. Without thinking, she sat on the chair, her skirt slightly lifted up, revealing snow-white legs. Shah-Ir put it on her directly and started playing a dress-up game. Central Sonia Sea, Sinamu Island. This time when you went out, not only did you become an angel and find the book, but you also met Siadas. Under the huge bed, Gao Shinam asked while panting slightly and playing with Shah-Ir's hair. She had never thought that she would have such an unexpected surprise and find Shahtas, whom she had long thought was dead. The longest living elf singer in history. If I hadn't found her, she might have lived from the second age to the fifth age. Shah-Ir said as he was thinking about when he started to adapt to the new environment as easily as eating and drinking. This is not luck, it's just a long torture, trapped in a prison with no way out. Goshinam hugged Shah-Ir a little tighter. Certain aspects. Scourge is much stronger than Aquaman. It's not a cage anywhere. We are just in a bigger cage. Even in the world of books, Siadas has the opportunity to gain friendship and love. It's just that I've ruined it now. Shah-Ir originally wanted to be serious and have a bit of natural disaster style, so he stood up and spoke coldly. But there were no other elves in the palace, and lying down with pillows and cushions was very comfortable. He thought about it simply and thought that his status had been thrown away. He should just throw it away and pick it up again when needed. Did you predict anything? Gao Shinam asked nonchalantly. She had the feudal patriarchal personality. She may have a mutual affection with a thief in the future, although there is no chance now. Shah-Ir felt that it was a question whether he would throw away Grossel's travels in the future. The resurrection of the fantasy dragon should not be so easy to usurp. He still has a long way to go. Of course, it takes a certain amount of time to prepare to turn someone else's arrangement into your own. The best is a portable resurrection, like sealed object 008 plus virtual personality plus miracle city, start, message, which can automatically activate the resurrection process. Gao Shinam chuckled and said nothing. She could tell that Shah-Ir was not worried about anything. Did the Storm Lord split the Rorstad archipelago? Shah-Ir asked about another thing. Since the Lord of Storms didn't strike him, there was no reason why he wouldn't strike the Roside Islands. If we hadn't prepared in advance, I don't know how many elves would have died. The faint smile on Gao Shinam's face disappeared. The elves, who were supposed to exist as anchors, have now become the weak points of the elf subordinate gods. The elves nowadays are basically sealed up, with their bodies sealed in a secret spiritual space and their spirits living in a large dream woven by the elf queen, but this is obviously not comfortable enough. Transfer the elves to the world in the book. The environment there is at least better than in the dream. Shah-Ir had wanted to do this a long time ago. Everyone has preferences. The Western continent is not coming out. He prefers gentle faces. Elves of Oriental appearance. Good. This requires the help of Sylvis. Gao Shinam nodded, put on an intricate and ancient long dress, and then shared a spiritual world coordinate with Shah-Ir. The god of luck of the elves, the Mercury serpent of the Destiny Path Sequence 1, Service. Shah-Ir naturally knew the name of the god of luck, now. As the light and shadow of the spiritual world continued to change, he and the elf queen soon came to a closed spiritual space. The god of luck, Sylvis, also appeared here. The god of luck is responsible for isolating fate, and of course he will show up. As long as these elves are safe, these anchors are not shaken, and the number of elves does not continue to decrease, the god of luck, that can be restarted continuously, does not need to be so cautious. Shah-Ir looked at the god of luck, Service, who had a slender figure, a handsome face, and no obvious gender characteristics. Her long black hair was loose, and she was wearing a unique shark silk robe, which was very simple, with only some dark patterns symbolizing the waves as embellishment. The pair of silver eyes looked at Shah-Ir and Gao Shinam, swept across the two of them, simply detected their fate, confirmed that there was no abnormality, and opened the real channel to the spiritual world. There is no extra emotion expressed, giving people a rather cold and introverted feeling. Chapter 113 Official Account. The God of Luck has lifted the veil on the realm of destiny. Take Shur and Gao Shinam into the place where most of the elves are sleeping. This is a structure similar to an insect nest. Inside the densely packed caves, there are elves lying one after another. They seem to be in a certain cycle that can delay the body's normal reactions to the greatest extent. Shah-Ir took out Grossel's travels, and, with the cooperation of the god of luck and Kazanamu, transferred these elves to the world in the book. In the world of the book, Siadas looked at the elves falling into the sea like dumplings, and she couldn't help but raise the corners of her mouth. Finally she found her fellow elves. Although there may be some problems with the direction, it doesn't matter. She is so happy. Of course, it is impossible for these elves who fell into the sea to be drowned by the water. As the dream world in which these elves were immersed dissipated, their consciousness gradually became clear, and their heads floated to the surface one by one, looking at these new worlds. Above the sky, Shar, Gao Shinmu, the god of luck, overlooks the entire world in the book. This is almost an incomplete kingdom of God. Goshinam looked at the world in the book with satisfaction. The elves finally found a safe place to live, even if it was the world in the book. The world inside the book also has a very high ability to counter divination and prophecy. God of Luck had a silver light flashing in his eyes, and he confirmed the safety level of the world in the book. In addition to being part of Angerweed's backhand for resurrection, the development of the story in the world of the book will also provide an anchor for the negative personality of this ancient god. The world in the book is now inhabited by elves. I hope these anchors, the negative personalities of the dragon of imagination, will be satisfied. Shah-Ir smiled and said, if it weren't for the pollution of the Chaos Sea, he would really like to correct that personality. Just thinking about brainwashing the personality of an ancient god in the spiritual realm is a very interesting thing. I'll leave some arrangements. The god of luck looked at Shah-Ir and said, on the one hand, it is necessary to ensure that even across the world in the book, one can still receive the anchor provided by the elves. On the other hand, we must also prevent any sudden changes in the world of the book from bringing danger to the elves. As the Archangel of Destiny, he was able to leave enough early warning measures. Sure, although Shah-Ir felt that nothing would go wrong with his virtual personality in charge, it was always better to be on the safe side. He looked at the runes of fate engraved on a huge bronze bell that the god of luck gave to the elf kingdom. This is also a form of early warning. After the elves, affairs were dealt with. Shah-Ira returned to the Principality of Pers in the western part of the northern continent. Although the northern continent is still somewhat chaotic, due to the large number of gods, they are relatively restrained. At least the continental margins are relatively stable. The first thing Shah-Ira did when he came back was to look for Erodes, or rather the butler, Roside. Erodes, I want to access some authority over time. Do you have any ideas? Shah-Ira actually wanted a copy of the Beander characteristics of the sequence one-time worm. He paused for a moment, thinking that it was not that he had no solution. The authority of time. This question stumped Erodes. The 22 divine pathways on Earth were many. Space could be manipulated at will, and many pathways had relevant authority, but when it came to time, there was very little authority. It's okay, I think I've figured out a solution. We can think about expansion. Shah-Ira decided to continue expanding his territory using secular means in the border area of the northern continent. Just leave a virtual personality to give remote commands. Of course he just hid himself obediently and continued to live his life until no one in the world dared to claim to be his superior. Erodes agreed with Shah-Ira's proposal. Of course, he wanted to stay with Shah-Ira. As for here, isn't there the butler, Rorsted, here? Believe in virtual personalities. This is my own power. Above the gray fog, Shah-Ira, a virtual personality composed of the fantasy characteristics of Wrong Path Sequence 5, is thinking. It seems that the only thing that is positively correlated with time is the time worm of Error Path Sequence 1. At least it is more reliable than the frozen time at dusk. Should we say it's better to arrive at the right time than to arrive early? Shah-Ira leveraged the power of the gray fog space and stimulated the power of the heart of the mist demon wolf in his hand. He began to try to pull the historical poor projection. After several failures, he succeeded once. In his hand, a blank card of blasphemy appeared. This is the universal blasphemy card from Secret Sage. Potion formulas and ability performance of the wrong path. I know all about this part of occult knowledge. A gentleman who loves diving posted it on the official account. Shah-Ira tapped the blank card with his finger, and an elf wearing a light gauze dress, with long hair, a gentle face and a very neutral beauty gradually appeared on it. The key point was that she was holding a monocle in her hand, but she was not wearing it. The card becomes a book with pages that can be turned freely, and various mystical knowledge is imprinted on it. Branded from Sequence 9 to Sequence 0. Shah-Ira looked at part of the content of Sequence 1. Sequence 1 Time Worm. Main materials, a time worm extraordinary characteristics, or the right eye of Olmir, auxiliary materials, an ancient clock, a calendar that was once used, and a hidden destiny. Ritual. Plunge a city into time chaos for at least 7 days. Can the content of this ritual be any clearer or more vague? As expected of you, Mr. Fortune Teller. Even the rituals are so fortune-telling. After Shah-Ira finished complaining about this, not sure whether to call it a simple or difficult general ascension ritual, he examined the extraordinary abilities of the Worm of Time. It has long been known that the Sequence 1 Time Worm can steal time, anchors, and authority. The most important thing about the Time Worm is that it possesses a weakened authority of time symbolized by the Lord of Time and Space. Abstract. Shah-Ira commented and then accepted this wrong, blasphemous card. There was no change in his appearance, except that his clothes were thinner, his features were softer, and he looked a little more sensual overall, but it was not a big problem. By accommodating the wrong and profane cards, I strengthened myself in certain aspects. I don't have the wrong authority. But to make mistakes, you don't necessarily have to have the authority to make mistakes. Isn't the authority to change already here? Shah-Ira casually threw the Sequence 3 Demon Wolf heart aside and looked at the Tianzun curtain floating in the distance. He began to draw mysterious runes one by one, leveraging the power of the gray fog space to make the Tianzun curtain move. Use the ability of grafting, or tampering, to try to solve the problem of the time flow speed between the 4th and 5th eras. 114 Bounty Hunter. Chapter 114 Bounty Hunter. The Fifth Era. Backland, St. Samuel's Cathedral. Shaw learned from Daly that Klein had unfortunately died. His expression became extremely complicated. As a murderer to a certain extent, he felt that he needed to take responsibility. What was the cause of death? Shaw's expression was a little heavy, and it seemed that he found it difficult to accept the news. That day, he left his work post as usual and rested in the duty room of Blackthorn Security Company. The next day, the night watcher found his body dead. Daly only said what was on the surface. It sounds like a story about working overtime until death, staying up late until the oil runs out, and then leaving this hell on earth peacefully. What a person. He couldn't stand the tediousness of saying goodbye and left quietly. I'm talking about the cause of death. You're talking about the result. He is still so young. The last time I saw him, he was fine, although a little thinner. Shaw reached out and grabbed Daly's shoulders, desperate for an explanation. Calm down, the church is also investigating this. Perhaps it's because of the power of Antigonus's notes, or perhaps Klein got tainted with something when investigating every supernatural event, such as ordinary, haunting, events, or perhaps it's some other reason, but this is what the Nighthawks need to bear. We are guardians, but also a group of pitiful creatures who are constantly facing madness and danger. Daly was also in a low mood. To some extent, Klein was still the one who joined the Nighthawks, but at this time, she still made herself look calm. I see. Shaw took a deep breath and gave a somewhat forced smile. All I know is that the goddess's kingdom is our eternal destination. The day of reunion is always there, it just may take a long time. Ms. Daly, I won't bother you anymore. Shaw turned around, lowered his head slightly, and walked away with a somewhat unnatural expression. Daly had no way to deal with this. This was not the first time this had happened. There had been many cases in Tingen City before. Some people who had survived extraordinary events had lived a normal life for more than a decade, had a happy family, a successful career, and then one day they suddenly committed suicide for no reason or cause. Precisely because it is uncontrollable, difficult to prevent, and full of dangers, the road to transcendence is considered urgent by many people. Shaw went all the way to the bathroom and paid tribute to his deceased colleague. Of course he knew how Klein died. If a car's oil and gasoline are all gone, isn't it dead, in a sense? Audience Path Sequence 1. The writer personally handles the traces, so it is certainly not easy for the Church of Darkness to investigate anything. Regardless of whether something was discovered during the investigation, it would certainly not be revealed to ordinary Nighthawks. The incident involving Klein Moretti can only be characterized as an accident. After mourning for a moment, Shaw walked out of the bathroom, thinking that Detective Sherlock Moriarty might have arrived in Backland by now. What will this gentleman do this time without the driving force of hatred? Underworld. Ince Zangwill traveled through this mysterious area. He was looking for a suitable target, and when he found an aura close to divinity somewhere, he changed his target and approached quickly. Buzz. The underworld creature whose status was close to that of a demigod felt a strange aura appearing inside his territory, and that the other party actually dared to rampage in his territory. The ghostly blue fire in his eyes was burning fiercely, and he was obviously extremely angry. The horrifying aura spread, and other underworld creatures that happened to pass by felt the fluctuations, and it was as if the pause button had been pressed directly. They shrank into a ball in their own ways. And this is the hierarchical path of death. Those in power are able to dominate the lower classes at will. Ince Zangwill was not greatly affected. Even though he was restrained by an invisible ghost hand and his vitality was constantly draining away, he did not react at all. He just looked at the underworld creature in front of him with a scrutinizing look. No one can stand this kind of provocation, not even the creatures from the underworld. The underworld lord pulled Ince Zangwill closer, intending to eat him in one bite. Then everything went dark before its eyes, and it was imprisoned by this weak gatekeeper, who used himself as a prisoner, and locked it in a small underworld inside its body. Ince Zangwill, Or rather, Ins stretched out his hand and made a gesture of closing the door. The illusory door to the underworld in front of him closed, and the door to the underworld in his body was also closed. The Lord of the Underworld was so angry that he wanted to bang on the door. He took a feather pen, drew a ghostly talisman, and pasted it on the door. The Lord of the Underworld bumped into himself and ran after him, his skeleton shaking, but he just couldn't break free. Of course it won't accept that. Instinctively release your power. This chill began to permeate, and Ins's vitality began to steadily drain away. This almost turned him into a dead person, ushering in physical death. He snapped his fingers, and the underworld creature that was close to being a demigod in his body seemed to hear a majestic dragon roar. Then he gradually calmed down, and the dark flames in his eyes were tinged with a hint of gold. Half dead, half alive, can also be considered as a sequence 4 demigod of the death path, and undead. Ins directly borrowed the abilities of the underworld creatures in his body and continued to travel through the underworld. Backland. Klein moved into his new home, lived at number 15 Minsk Street, and began his career as a detective. As a private detective who dares to make a living in the detective industry, he makes his debut when he says he will, and he is not afraid of starving to death. Klein was quite good at handling the trivialities of life. Toast with bad butter, and cheap tea at 1 pa liter. This was the first morning he spent in Backland, and accompanying him was the gray, unhealthy-looking but presumably friendly sky, as well as the cold and humid environment. Although I have already published GG in the Backland Post. But no matter how you think about it, you know there won't be any business coming in the short term. What else is there that can earn money quickly, has more flexible working hours, and is more in line with the personality of a detective? Klein gave a rather expectant smile. Of course it's the bounty hunter. He is the lower house. Isn't it faster to make money by catching wanted criminals than by being a detective? And this is just and beneficial to social order. It fits the character of a former night watchman and current private detective. This is my first time trying to be a bounty hunter, and I don't know if I can do it well. This bounty hunter, who later became famous, was still somewhat ambitious and excited at this time. Chapter 115. Emperor Russell is having a great time. September 17th. Backland, 3 p.m. No matter what happened last week, Monday's tarot session cannot be interfered with. In order to coordinate with the Tarot Club, Shah has recently intentionally adjusted his work and rest schedule. Unlike Mr. Fool, who is planning various investment matters. When Shah consciously noticed that the 7 major banks in Backland were not guarded by 7 demigods, he lost interest in money. How could the Kingdom of Loan be so disrespectful of money? Although guarding the vault does not necessarily require a strong person to guard it all the time, there are many ways to do it. But isn't it a failure in disguise that we can't spare 7 demigods to look after the bank? Shah joked casually in his heart, and with a flash of crimson light, he appeared in the mysterious space above the gray fog. After Shah sat firmly in the giant mysterious palace, he heard Mr. Hanged Man thanking Mr. Fool in a solemn tone. Mr. Fool, thank you for sending your followers to help me solve a big problem. I collected 18 pages of Russell's diary this time as a thank you for helping me. Alger said after taking a deep breath. He originally thought that Chi Lingos would definitely run away, but he didn't expect that Mr. Fool's followers would actually take action. Moreover, he was much more reliable than the Singer of God. He dealt with Chi Lingos directly. Even the demigod of the church could not find out the identity of this lord. Wow, how big of a grudge do you have against Admiral Hurricane? Are you so happy that he's dead? Shah doesn't understand this kind of brotherhood, of growing up together. My current memory limit is 6 pages. Please allow me to provide it to you in batches. Alger's next words made Mr. Fool very happy. Either way, it's a great thing for him. Although Vice Admiral Hurricane's head was picked up by members of the Church of Evernight in the end, it was a good thing that the church picked it up, and the bounty did not go to outsiders, so it was barely acceptable. Klein was very open about it. After all, the money had nothing to do with him and he couldn't get it no matter what. Then it's time to read the diaries. The diary recorded again that Emperor Russell contacted Mr. Men, who was like a magic lamp, saying that as long as he helped him return to reality, he would fulfill his 3 requests. Unfortunately, Emperor Russell obviously did not believe in the magic lamp. He would rather believe that Qin Shi Huang could still play Duyin in the underground palace. Then there is some history of the Fourth Age, which is the most famous war of the 4 emperors. Emperor Russell didn't know much before, he only knew some general names, such as the Black Emperor of the Solomon Empire, which he now knows, the half-crazy Blood Emperor of the Tudor dynasty, the 2 Night Emperors of the Trunsost Empire, and the Underworld Emperor of the Southern Continent, the so-called God of Death. According to Mr. Men's description, in a war that affected the entire world, the Black Emperor, Blood Emperor, and Night Emperor fell one after another, and the Underworld Emperor gained the greatest benefit. The idea of the Hades was very good, and after more than 100 years of digestion, it became even more powerful. He also contacted the original witch. As long as he could capture some of the 7 gods, even just one, he would have a decisive advantage. Although he failed in the end, the battle between the 4 emperors had left the 7 gods with lingering fears. They already had a traumatic impression of lunatics, let alone 2 lunatics. Emperor Russell's shock was beyond words in his diary. After all, it was hard for him to imagine what it would be like when a god walked the earth. The emperor knew without even thinking that it would be very bad. The 7 gods could affect the fate of countless people with just a flick of their fingers. The Battle of the 4 Emperors. Klein took a closer look and knew without thinking how crazy this war was. Moreover, this also means that the speculation of some historians is true. The 4 dynasties may have existed briefly at some time. Did the Trunsost Empire have 2 Night Emperors? Even if other dynasties. Has the emperor changed too? Klein felt that it was possible. After all, according to history, the Black Emperor's Solomon Empire had been overthrown once. There is a lot more content in the diary. Emperor Russell asked Mr. Men what role he played in the War of the 4 Emperors. Mr. Men paused for a while, and finally simply avoided answering. In addition, there is the law of the indestructibility of extraordinary characteristics and the law of conservation of extraordinary characteristics within similar sequences. The knowledge summarized by this person in the Fourth Age or even earlier is equally valuable in this era. Mr. Men, can't these big shots use their own names or surnames? So how do I know which character this, Mr. Dorr, corresponds to? A certain Mr. Fool who also hides his real name, sighed in his heart. It's a good thing that the gods can no longer walk the earth as they did before, but I don't know what exactly restricts them. Could it be that, as Mr. Men said, gods can also go crazy? Is a crazy god an evil god? What about the incense being poisonous? All kinds of resentment, bad luck, and despair accumulated in the human world. These negative emotions are too strong and will affect the state of righteous gods to a certain extent. Klein resisted the urge to let his imagination run wild. Although Emperor Russell once said that all kinds of negative and extreme emotions are the nourishment of evil gods, the thought of gods turning evil was terrifying. He continued reading his diary. On June 2, the kingdom repeatedly created chaos and provoked wars, but was unable to completely defeat other countries. It had to bear high debts and the domestic economy reached the brink of madness. The people, merchants and soldiers are all very dissatisfied. Social contradictions are intensifying. Riots and uprisings may happen at any time. This is my chance. Ha ha ha, I've studied this history, I'm familiar with this. I will continue to wait for the conflicts to ferment, guide the conflicts among various classes to naturally erupt, and let these rebels disrupt order. When the Sauron family is no longer able to handle it, I will step forward as a protector, reshape order, and establish my own prestige. Ha ha ha, those ambitious people would never have thought that the revolution they fostered was paving the way for me. This is the advantage brought by vision. When it comes to rebellion, our hometown is all too familiar with it. No, I can't hold it back any longer. I have to endure it for now. As long as I wait until the Sauron family and those old nobles show their ugly behavior and completely exhaust the people's last goodwill towards them, then that will be my chance. What about the Church of the Eternal Sun? Under the general trend, they can only choose me. If they oppose me as their protector and support the old nobles of the Sauron family, it will shake their faith in Intis. It's time for me to take action. Even if I can't do anything yet, I have to start speaking up for the civilians, soldiers, and merchants. It would be best to make these old nobles angry and humiliated. If they lose their sense of proportion and do something radical, they will further lose the support of the people. Chapter 116. Count Your Fingers. Klein looked at the pile of rebellious speeches in Russell's diary and really didn't know what to say. Even just from these diaries, he could feel the Emperor's excitement at the time, the sense of superiority brought by his intelligence, and the feeling of watching the high and mighty royal family and old aristocrats fall into his trap and fall off the throne. It was indeed a feeling that made people unable to stop. Klein didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Looking at the various plans listed in the Emperor's diary, he even felt like he could do it himself. Isn't this the experience copied from various historical stories in my hometown? In this extraordinary world, royal families like the Sauron family and the old nobles certainly look down on all classes except the church. The various methods that Emperor Russell thought of to intensify the conflict were so smooth that he didn't even need to take the initiative to do anything. With a little guidance, everything will develop in the direction he imagines. In the Emperor's diary, the various methods he imagined were not systematic. He just wrote down whatever he thought of. But judging from the diary, these methods have achieved good results. For a moment, Klein felt a little envious. How could the Emperor copy everything? Even political tactics. What good thing has happened to the Emperor? The era in which Emperor Russell lived was really great. They simply don't understand the power of uniting the masses, and they don't realize this at all. Klein commented in his mind that these so-called nobles, including the royal family, did not care about the will of the people at all. It is clearly recorded in history textbooks that Emperor Russell, as a colonel, quelled the rebellion, launched a coup, and united other ambitious people and forces dissatisfied with the Sauron family to form a republic. It then took nearly 20 years to reform the code, gain the support of the Church of Steam through the Industrial Revolution, and win the tacit approval of the Church of the Eternal Sun by encouraging commerce. Then he began to unite the wealthy parliamentarians, weakened the power of the nobles, started wars in the south and the north, and established his own prestige in the army. After suppressing the aristocratic forces with a solid foundation to a certain extent and cultivating another force in the military that was in conflict with the traditional aristocracy, he directly launched a coup. Those equally ambitious congressmen could only watch and watch. They had no choice because their foundation was too weak. The old nobles who had the ability to stop it were also divided and suppressed by Emperor Russell in various ways over the past 20 years. Is the Emperor playing a game? Combining the contents of the diary with some historical records, Klein was able to understand the strategies of every step taken by Emperor Russell. He also knew these, but there was nothing he could do. The Emperor was born in a turbulent era. I can only envy. April 8th. Although it's not obvious, I can see that Zeratul has become nervous. What's the reason? Why does he look at me strangely? This reminds me of Zeratul's sudden visit before I quelled the rebellion and prepared for the coup. Depend on. Damn the fortune teller. A fortune teller, who was reading a diary helplessly pretended not to see it. In fact, life is very hard for those who occupy the lower house. You have no idea how dangerous occupation is. Mr. Fool smiled calmly. After reading Russell's diary, I suddenly remembered that there is some simple common sense that I seem to have never told you. Shah-Ir nodded in understanding. After all, you just found out about it and you didn't have the chance to tell us before. Wow. Audrey's eyes sparkled when she heard this. How could the common sense Mr. Fool mentioned be just ordinary common sense? Since Mr. Fool took the initiative to bring it up, it must be of great value. Mr. Fool, what exactly is common sense? I can exchange it for rewards. Audrey couldn't wait any longer. No, it's free common sense. I believe some of you have already mastered it. Mr. Fool said very generously. Next, the angel politely responded to the few glances coming over, and the fool began to talk about the law of immortality of Beander characteristics. It is also said that by killing extraordinary people, extraordinary characteristics or sealed objects can be dropped, which is also a manifestation of the law of the indestructibility of extraordinary characteristics. This is really convenient. There are always lucky people who can accidentally pick up various extraordinary characteristics, and then embark on the extraordinary road, starting a mysterious journey to bid farewell to the ordinary. This also provides a way for Beyonders who don't have the Beander formula to advance. It doesn't matter if you don't have the next sequence of potion formulas. Just find a way to kill a Beander, and then take the Beander characteristics, and you'll be able to advance. Shah-Ir feels that the original design of the creator is still relatively humane. Treasures will drop when you kill monsters, and as long as you work hard, you will be rewarded. There is no high probability of dropping treasures, and there is no discrimination against non-Africans. Such conscientious planning deserves praise. The vampire ancestor Lilith and the demon king Farbuti are examples. Everything is destined by heaven. They are destined to become gods. They don't have to do anything. They become gods naturally when they wake up. What? Mr. Angel actually said this is a good thing. This is cannibalism. Audrey was shocked, but she began to comfort herself, telling herself that this is how the mysterious world is, and she should accept it all and move on bravely. Shah-Ir felt a little disappointed when he found that Justice did not say anything just. He had already thought about how he was going to attack Miss Justice after she spoke. Why is this guy so quiet now? Mr. Angel. Audrey turned her head in a puzzled manner. Nothing, I was just fascinated. Shah-Ir turned his head and pretended that he was not thinking about anything. Are you fascinated by this gray and white mist? Or the pattern on Miss Justice's clothes? Klein was speechless. Even the excuses he made were so perfunctory. The angel was really becoming more and more casual. Was it because he was gradually becoming familiar with Miss Justice? Mr. Fool, I want to know what adjacent sequence means. Alger asked. I can tell you, but you need to help me investigate the secret society further. The fool was not reserved this time. After all, the Tarot Club had an angel, and he couldn't let the angel take away his business. Okay, but can I know the answer in advance? Alger did not refuse. Mr. Fool, I also want to join this transaction. Audrey raised her hand quickly. Me too. Derek nodded quickly. Sure. The fool didn't even wait for the angel, he lowered his head and started counting his fingers. No. He was actually counting his fingers at a tarot reading. For a moment, Klein had the illusion that this was a class reunion or a parents' meeting. Adjacent pathways are simply pathways that can be converted into each other at high sequence levels. For example, the death path, when advancing to sequence 4, can be switched between the warrior path and the knight path. It won't be like taking the wrong potion and causing an irreversible loss of control. Chapter 117 Environmental Advantages. Adjacent Pathways. I understand. After some thought, Derek finally understood something and his excitement was beyond words. Audrey and Alger also noticed that Derek looked obviously different, and even Mr. Fool turned his gaze over. What did this child understand? Does anyone in your place also change routes? Angel, Shah-Ir said. He seemed to have thought of something, but he couldn't remember it for a moment. It felt like a strange change of direction. Change. Yes, Mr. Angel. I remember that the former chief of our Silver City was known as the strongest person who was most likely to break through the restrictions of the Silver Knight. He built a mausoleum for himself and lived in it. He rarely appeared after that. It may be that he wanted to be promoted and took the path of death. The son, Derek said. If someone else asked him, he might hesitate, but when Mr. Angel asked him, he would definitely answer every question. Because Mr. Angel is the only one here who understands them. Mr. Fool doesn't count. Mr. Fool is a nearly godlike being and it is difficult to define him in human terms. Silver Knight. This is another new word. Warrior path. That's very appropriate. Audrey continued to listen. With the actual example of the sun, she could better understand what Mr. Fool meant by changing the path. The former chief. Wasn't it successful? Alger thought about this problem. It seems that changing the route is not as safe as the original route, and there are still risks. We don't know either. Afterwards, the former chief stayed in the mausoleum and rarely appeared. The other elders of Silver City also did not allow us to approach or enter. The other citizens of Silver City all felt that this chief had problems during his promotion and was close to losing control and reason, so he chose to resolve the situation himself. But we're not sure what really happened to him, and whether he turned into a monster. Derek said uncertainly. Although he was uncertain, in Silver City's previous understanding, this kind of thing was almost equivalent to death. It's terrible. Audrey said so. Even the strongest chief elder of Silver City would encounter this kind of danger. What's the difference between this and building a tomb for yourself? The path of death. Your previous chief can't be blamed for this. Although I don't know that much about the death path, I also know that the death path sequence 3 Ascension ceremony and subsequent versions will inevitably involve dealing with the underworld. In your place, if you want to communicate with the underworld, it will inevitably be more troublesome. This is a disguised way of adding danger and burden to your own general promotion. Shah-Ir thought about it and realized that the fact that the artificial god of death could influence the former chief of Silver City across the god-forsaken land was problematic in itself, and the medium could only be the underworld. The third sequence of the death path is called Ferryman. The ferryman on the river Styx, a ghost place like the god-forsaken land, wants to establish a certain connection with the underworld. What's the difference between that and gambling with your life? If he is a demigod of the orthodox path of the god of death, it would be fine. He also has the special immortality of the demigod of the path of the god of death. It can increase the chance of success. If you switch from the warrior path to the death path, you will suffer a lot. Shah-Ir felt that this was because the negative buffs were stacked up. If it was a sequence 4 undead on the path of death, as they continued to die and be reborn, they would continue to get closer to the river Styx. This would naturally help complete the ritual of sequence 3. Even if problems arose during the ascension, death and resurrection might give one time to adjust. Silver Knight becomes ferryman, or is it some ghost place like the god-forsaken land? Isn't this a scam? Promotion ceremony. Audrey listened carefully. She remembered every term Shah-Ir said, including ferryman, underworld, and ascension ceremony. To put it simply, you need to choose the appropriate dress for different banquets, but you don't have to choose a specific dress. Then the people at the party might exclude you, and your personal charm and communication skills will be tested. Quote, starting from sequence 5, if you want to deceive the guards of the castle, blend in, and steal the power of the potion, you need to be well prepared, such as dressing yourself up. Shah-Ir understood this very well. He continued, another word is synchronization. Let your spirit be in tune with the remaining spiritual imprints in the potion, incorporate them into your melody, and let your voice be the leader. This explanation is fine, the fool said in his heart. Audrey and Alger also understood a little. These two people, one is a party master, and the other is a youth singing group, can understand this meaning. Mr. Angel, do you mean to say that in the environment of Silver City, there is a great risk in changing the path to ascend to the death god path? Derek caught the point and asked quickly. Of course, the environment will also affect the choice of potion path. Can't you feel it yourself? In places where you can't see the sun, choose the sun path. When you reach the sun path sequence 8 prayer of light, sequence 7 sun priest, you will know that you need to put more energy into digestion. Shah-Ir looked at the sun and said. What he didn't point out was that the sun in his heart was also the sun, carrying with him the desire to save the city of silver. His heart was lit by his wish and he was not confused. The road ahead was naturally filled with light and not shrouded in darkness. After hearing what Shah-Ir said, Derek did not regret his choice, but he still felt a little disappointed. After all, he was still a child and would worry about the gains and losses of the choices he made. So, you have to work harder than others. This is the path you chose. Shah-Ir encouraged gently. He now seemed to understand a little bit why the priest liked the Shota. It turned out that there was a certain logic behind the existence of P. I understand, Mr. Angel. Little son, cheered up again. Looking at those pure eyes, Shah-Ir suddenly wanted to see what expression this child would have if he was deceived and betrayed. Because he didn't try to restrain himself, the lady in the audience next to him also felt something. She looked at the gentleman next to her helplessly. But she couldn't say anything. After all, she didn't want to discourage Xiao Yang, so she could only interrupt. Gentlemen, may I ask if you have obtained the complete pituitary gland of an adult lizard dragon that I requested? Audrey didn't forget that she would take Susie with her, and of course the dog couldn't be left out. It doesn't matter if you buy a little more and throw it into the family treasury. After all, extraordinary materials are value-preserving. Listening to Audrey's tone, Alger suddenly felt like he had become Miss Justice's offshore wholesaler. But how can I give it to you? Alger asked Audrey. I want to send something to you. Can you give me an address? Audrey was stunned. Yes, how can I give it to you? Chapter 118 Clouds in the Sky. What do I do? How did he give it to me? Address. I definitely can't give him my address, and I can't let Hugh and Fowles do it for me, because that would expose me as an extraordinary person. But it seems that one must always choose one of the two. Emperor Russell once said that when both options have disadvantages, choose the less severe one. Shah-Ir couldn't help laughing when he saw Audrey's conflicted look. His laughter was not loud, but it still made Miss Justice turn around and glare at him. Emperor Russell once said that when you feel embarrassed, don't embarrass yourself, but embarrass others instead. 9. You don't want to reveal your address, so you can just ask Mr. Hanged Man to pack up the things and leave them at the address he gave you before, which is the Brave in the Sea bar in the White Rose district of Pritz Harbor. How could you allow your people to deliver the ghost shark blood to Mr. Hanged Man? How could you allow your people to take away the pituitary gland of the 1000 illusion lizard dragon there? Isn't this simple? Shah-Ir didn't know what Miss Justice was thinking. He asked you to give the address, so you thought about how to give the address. Is that so cute? That makes sense. Why didn't I think of that? Audrey's eyes lit up. Although she didn't know the specific value of the two extraordinary materials, she knew that the difference was not very big. What's the difference between £100 or less than £200 in equivalent value? Mr. Hanged Man was assured of the address, and she was not afraid that things would be lost, and there were many ways to get them back later. Mr. Hanged Man. Audrey's eyes moved and she didn't finish her words, but her meaning was very clear. You have made so much money from me, you won't mind, right? Alger. He glanced at the angel, who was watching the show and had no way to refuse, so he could only say, if you have no objection, I have no objection either. Thank you for your understanding. Audrey thanked him politely. She was still a little annoyed. Emperor Russell had said so many wise words, but why didn't she remember them? Such useful words. Mr. Fool, who was about to say, I have an attempt that may solve this problem, fell silent. Don't make things difficult for yourself, but make things difficult for others. Did Emperor Russell really say such a thing? Although I haven't heard it, it feels like something the Emperor could say. Mr. Angel, you really are. Audrey thought about it, but couldn't find the right adjective. A lot of life experience, right? Shah-Ir concluded. That's right. Audrey nodded immediately. This description was very appropriate. Alger, who was sitting opposite, resisted the urge to engage in a fistfight. He might not be able to win, and he couldn't afford to offend Miss Justice, his financial sponsor. Derek also looked thoughtful, actively learning and trying to understand. Klein saw that his tarot club was changing from a tea party or some other mess. He quickly reached out and gently knocked on the long bronze table. You reminded me. Klein began to brew emotions. Does Mr. Fool have any good ideas to solve some of the troubles we may encounter in the transaction? Shah-Ir raised his hand by the way. It's just a try. I don't know if you are willing to cooperate. Mr. Fool waved his hand modestly. I don't really want to say it, but if you insist, I'll tell you. Try. I'm happy to cooperate. Audrey also became excited, but still maintained her reserve and elegance. She remembered that every time Mr. Fool tried, he would give her a big surprise. Coming again. Alger frowned. What does this mean? Help us. Or help yourself. The angels don't object. Then I support it too. Your wish is my expectation. Alger lowered his head and spoke respectfully and humbly. The little son next to him was a little annoyed. Mr. Fool said it was just a small attempt, so it was just a small attempt and we just need to cooperate. Why are Miss Justice and Mr. Hanged Man so sensitive? He glanced at Mr. Angel, the only one who was waiting for Mr. Fool to speak and then cooperating directly like him. The same is true for Mr. Angel. There's nothing wrong with his idea. My attempt may make your future transactions simpler, safer, and more secretive. Mr. Fool found that he kind of liked this feeling. He leaned back on the bronze chair and said lightly, do you remember the sacrificial ceremony described by the sun? The patient's gaze is primarily directed toward the hanged man. Alger's scalp tingled. Was his brief resistance just now noticed? But how could he not resist? Orthodox gods rarely require sacrifices. Since the Fifth Age, the word, sacrifice, has often been associated with evil gods or demons, and is full of strange and dangerous elements. Who knows if the price of sacrifice will be the soul of the sacrificer? I've learned about it before. Alger said with gritted teeth. He didn't dare to object, but he hoped that at this time, the angel would stand up bravely and say no to Mr. Fool's unreasonable request. Really? Will this be too much trouble for you? Shah-Ir was appropriately polite. It's easy for me. My idea is that you will sacrifice the items you need to trade to me through a ritual, and I will then give them to others. Mr. Fool's two simple sentences caused an uproar. It's easy to say. But what's the difference between this and space teleportation? As a traditional noble lady, she had witnessed the most intense and extraordinary wars, but it was nothing more than a few wind blades in the hurricane. This tested her comprehension a bit. Mr. Fool is awesome. Audrey nearly jumped out of her chair. She turned to look at the angel beside her, her eyes filled with uncontrollable excitement and anticipation. Don't you agree, Mr. Angel? This is really amazing. We can actually do business in a divine way. I am as delighted as you are, Miss Justice. Shah-Ir responded affirmatively. He was also very pleased. Mr. Fool was awesome. I don't want to bother Mr. Fool to explain such a trivial matter as the sacrificial ceremony. I will teach you. Shah-Ir took the initiative to suggest. Mr. Fool is not easy to refuse. Mr. Hanged Man looked suspicious. There are many kinds of sacrificial ceremonies. The traditional ones include a secret ceremony that completely lets go of the body and mind. In this kind of ceremony, the sacrificer has almost no reservations in front of the contract target. This is also a method that demons often use to deceive their believers. Orthodox sacrificial ceremonies usually use some kind of medium as a carrier to separate it from the body, which is safer. After so many years of development, mysticism has naturally figured out a relatively sound method of sacrifice. The steps of the sacrificial ceremony are broken down and arranged in layers, with each link progressing in a progressive manner. Shah-Ir suddenly added, Orthodox gods rarely respond to similar rituals, and it's also troublesome. Mr. Fool is willing to provide us with convenience. In the Orthodox Church, this is a treatment that only those favored by God can enjoy. We have Mr. Fool to thank. Chapter 119 Angel's Gift. We have Mr. Fool to thank. After the angel finished speaking, the hanged man resisted the urge to twitch his lips. If the angel had not introduced in detail the secret ceremony and the compound sacrifice ceremony that could be interrupted in time, he would have almost believed the angel's lies. Do you really trust Mr. Fool? Do you trust me as much as you say? Alger lowered his head, feeling that the tarot club with the angel was so convenient and safe. Yes, we all have to thank Mr. Fool for his help. Audrey also thanked the Fool sweetly. Derek also nodded. These two have a basic trust in the Fool. Mr. Fool didn't think too much about it. He was more focused on memorizing the knowledge points mentioned by the angel. Whether it is a secret ceremony or a complex sacrificial ceremony. These are things I have never come across before. Which serious righteous church would teach its own beyonders how to offer sacrifices to evil gods? Mr. Angel is indeed a treasure. Klein concluded. The sacrificial ceremony he had originally prepared was to have them set up a simple altar and then draw a specific symbolic rune. The ceremony has become more complicated now, which has no harm. The only difference is that the cost of materials will increase, but he doesn't need to pay for it. If you want to keep it simple, you can also use this rune. Klein thought for a moment and said, he still produced a light curtain, showing a symbol composed of the eye without eyes, and the twisted thread. He has to consider Xiao Taiyang's financial situation as well as the members of the Tarot Club. If the situation is urgent and there is no time to collect those occult materials, then there is an emergency measure. Your thoughtfulness is so touching that I want to cry. Shah Iyer was really touched this time. Isn't this equivalent to telling netizens your home address? I'll try to remember. Audrey tried to remember. Alger took a deep breath. He would rather spend more money on materials than take risks. Although making the ritual more complicated might not be helpful, it was always better to be cautious. Mr. Fool, do you have any matching spells? Derek asked. He didn't remember that a symbol alone had power, and it must have required other forces to push it forward. This does require the assistance of a spell. You can use any occult language you want. The spell is, your loyal servant, I pray for your attention, I pray for you to accept his gift, and I ask you to open the door to the kingdom. Don't try it here. The spell still requires the cooperation of spiritual materials. Wait until you need it before trying it. Mr. Fool emphasized this after he finished the spell, and it was obvious that he was speaking to a certain practical person. Shah Iyer didn't say anything. He has no intention of calling himself a servant at present. It's possible in private. Alger had a guess. Open the door to the kingdom. Could it be opening the door to some sealed place? Does the Fool want to use them to infiltrate power into the real world little by little, until the day when it completely descends into reality? As Alger thought about this, he had a new doubt. There was no need for them to do this. Didn't Mr. Fool have some powerful followers? Is there a deeper secret hidden here? As he thought about this, he subconsciously glanced at the angel. He found that the angel had his head down, and he didn't know what he was thinking. He was startled for a moment, then pretended nothing had happened and looked away. The Fool is still here, and he and the angel cannot openly express their concerns at the same time. They cannot communicate with each other, as this might cause the Fool's dissatisfaction. But Alger believed that he and the angel had a tacit understanding. Even without communication, they could work together to play different roles in the Tarot Club and be alert to possible dangers. Wow, I really want to try this magical ritual right away. Audrey was looking forward to seeing this magical scene as soon as possible. If it weren't for her young girl's modesty, she would have wanted to urge Mr. Hanged Man to go back and complete the ceremony as soon as possible. Mr. Fool, can you tell me that I can do that, too? Derek asked incredulously. Can he exchange items with the world, where Mr. Angel lives? This is simply a miracle. Sure, if the attempt goes well. Klein actually had no idea, but he felt that there was no problem in theory. Doesn't this mean that Mr. Fool can help us send the spirit to the City of Silver? Shah Iyer thought of a question at this time. Since the logic is the same. If, on the other side of West Road, someone performs the ritual that the Fool mentioned, will it be successful, or will the gray fog space respond? Although the seal of the Western continent is very strong. But the sealing power of the Western continent also comes from Saphira Castle and the gray mist space. Don't they have any privileges in the internal network? This tarot meeting ends here. After some time everyone left. Klein took the pituitary gland of the 1000 illusion lizard that Alger had sacrificed, played with it for a bit, and then, granted, it to Miss Justice. When he was about to leave the gray fog, he received another signal. He clicked it and saw that it was a sacrifice submitted by an angel. Mr. Fool, in order to cooperate with your attempt, please help me pass these to Mr. Sun. Of course Klein would not refuse. He opened the door of sacrifice, and then a large pile of cans fell out from the void. Klein looked at everything in front of him blankly. He picked up a few and took a quick look. His eyes became even more confused. Canned beef, canned pork and ham, canned apples, canned tomatoes, canned peas, canned sardines, and canned oysters are all of good quality, have a long shelf life, and are easy to use. But the question is, why did Mr. Angel send a bunch of canned food to Little Sun, and why did he buy so much at one time? If I really send them to Xiaoyang, where would Xiaoyang hide these things? Klein fell silent. If Silver City discovered these cans, they might pose a threat to Little Sun. Mr. Angel, this is really a difficult problem for me. After thinking for a while, Klein decided to send the canned food over, but he needed to communicate with Little Sun in advance. I can't ask him to return the can shell to me after he finishes eating, right? What then has become of the fool? Klein smiled bitterly, but still touched the crimson star of the Little Sun and briefly explained the matter. A place forsaken by God. Derek actually didn't understand what Mr. Fool meant by canned food, but since it was a gift from Mr. Angel, that remains to be seen. When he got older, he buried these canned goods at home. To be on the safe side, he decided to ask Mr. Fool to send him a few first. 120 White Saint. Chapter 120 White Saint. The dim light illuminates the dark environment indoors. Son, Derek stood in front of the altar and looked in front of him. The space seemed to open up, and a vortex-like distortion appeared, and 3 iron cans fell out from it. Is this the gift Mr. Angel gave me? After verifying that Mr. Fool could really help Silver City exchange goods with the outside world, Derek was delighted. Look at the gift from Shah Iyer. He is not a primitive man, so of course he knows how to open a can. After pulling the ring and rolling up the iron sheet, Derek smelled it. It seemed to be some kind of food. The child didn't think much about it and just tasted it. It was sweet and delicious. He couldn't help licking his lips and quickly finished a can of apple. In Silver City, a place where only black-faced grass can survive, fruit is definitely a luxury among luxuries. Then he looked at the remaining 2 cans. The packaging was slightly different, and perhaps the contents were also different. Want to eat? Derek was somewhat tempted, but after some hesitation, he still couldn't bear to eat it. After all, there are only 2 of them. He resisted his desire and responded to Mr. Fool through a prayer ritual. It's okay, Mr. Fool. I have my own separate place where I can hide these things. I'll bury them later. Derek knew that Mr. Fool was concerned about him, so in order not to make Mr. Fool worry, he spoke with certainty. After the words fell, the spiritual power that had been comforting the room continued to fluctuate, and more than a dozen cans fell out of it. Derek looked at everything in front of him in great shock. After a moment of stunned silence, he quickly squatted down, picked up all the cans on the ground, and held them carefully in his arms. How could such precious food fall to the ground? Even with the protection of iron sheet, this is still a blasphemy to food. Derek placed a pile of canned food of various colors, recalling the sweet taste in his mouth, and felt a little dizzy. At this moment, he didn't know how to repay Mr. Angel's kindness. This is so precious. This is only 1/3. If you can handle it, I will give you these in batches later. A crimson light flashed, and the words of the fool rang in his ears. Little Sun was stunned. This was only 1/3. Oh my God. Omniscient and omnipotent God. Mr. Angel. Derek's nose felt sore and his eyes became moist. He swore that he would repay Mr. Angel in the future. Above the gray fog, Klein looked at the dozens of cans in front of him with intricate coloring. He had noticed some of the sun's obvious emotional fluctuations during the ceremony just now. At this moment, Klein really didn't know what to say. Can you bribe the Little Sun just by using some canned food? This guy, Angel. Was it intentional or unintentional? We have breakfast for tomorrow. Klein picked up a can of beef and smiled. He was happy to see Tarot Club members helping each other. The breakfast combination of 2 slices of bread and cheap butter is finally a little richer. It's not easy to hide so many things at once in Little Son's place. Leave it here with him first. He will eat the ones he has, and give them back to Little Son after he makes money from bounties. The meals that Mr. Fool prepared for the first few days after he started his happy plan. As for Shaw Iyer, he took some time to go to the market and bought a bunch of goods. He asked his valet Martin to arrange a carriage to take them back. He then took time to go to the bathroom. At this time, there was no one above the gray fog. Following the fool's request, he drew mysterious symbols to coordinate with the spiritual vibrations, and responded to his own sacrificial ritual through the back door. He threw in 2 cans of wolffish. I hope Mr. Fool likes it. Try it for him. It was worth it that he spent some extra time to buy these 2 cans. At this time, Klein had not yet sensed the danger. He had even planned to eat canned beef in the morning and canned fish in the evening. He was completely unaware of the danger. West District. Inside the villa, Shaw Iyer looked at the potion formula of the Hanged Man Path Sequence 6 Rose Bishop in silence. Sequence 6 Rose Bishop main materials. 1 undead flesh fungus, the largest fragment of the Shadow of Vengeance. Auxiliary materials. 100 milliliters of one's own blood, a piece of the companion vine of the undead flesh fungus, the residual powder of the Shadow of Revenge, and 10 grams of cinnamon. At least the name isn't that evil. Shaw Iyer felt that it would be easier to obtain Beander characteristics than to collect potion materials by himself, and Backlund had no shortage of rose bishops. But it can't be completely due to his extraordinary characteristics. He still has to participate in the Tarot Club's item transactions, which is also a kind of fun in life. The names and tastes of the potion ingredients in the Hanged Man Path are also very complicated. The strange materials of Sequence 9 include singing black mushrooms, deep spectrum bats, verbena powder, etc., which taste extremely bitter. Sequence 8 materials are normal, but drinking the potion will give you a mental high. The materials required for Sequence 7 include shadow worms, other people's blood, the tail of a certain black goat, and blasphemous objects that have desecrated a church. The strong taste will irritate the throat. As for Sequence 6, drinking the potion will give you a feeling of being skinned. Why did I choose a path where the potion tastes bad from the beginning to the end in order to seek novelty and midterm strength? Shaw Iyer felt that this was a test from God, so he drew a crimson moon on his chest to praise the great Mr. Fool. When the warm body touched me, all I could feel was the coldness of ice, and the dryness and stiffness of a dead tree. The White Saint let go of her hand with a teasing look in her eyes, and the coldness on Inzel's body gradually retracted into his body. Inz Zangwil, I never thought that you would change like this after becoming a demigod. The immortal witch of the Witch Church was obviously happy to see In's current zombie-like appearance. For a witch, other people's sadness is her happiness, and other people's pain is her pleasure. It's just a living dead. It can get hard, but it's dry and useless. Inzel's tone was very calm, and it was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry, but he did want to give this immortal witch a blow. Ha ha ha. When the White Saint heard what Inzel said, she laughed so hard that her body shook. Her eyes said, I don't mind, why don't you try to print it? Don't think an immortal has only one way. I can fill every pore on your body. Inzel raised his arms, and dark shadows appeared behind him. Each of the undead spirits stared at every part of the White Saint with cold eyes. Chapter 121 The Correct Way to Open Inns. These cute little things can't satisfy me. I need something hotter, smarter, more dynamic. The White Saint, Catalina tied up her hair, revealing her fair and delicate neck. Inzel understood, and he summoned a tentacle monster that looked like a sea urchin from the underworld. He then rubbed out a dark blue fireball with his hands and threw it upward. The tentacles that had originally curled up, as if stimulated by something, all expanded and extended, almost hitting the face of the White Saint. The underworld can satisfy all your needs and bring you an unparalleled experience. Inzel Sa'id so. He now understood the joy of the path of death. If an immortal could be so happy, he couldn't imagine how happy the Lord of the spirit world could be. What kind of attitude should the phoenix, which completely controlled death and partially controlled the spirit world, have? If it doesn't go out, it will be regarded as a stupid bird, the ancient sun god, and it can't even eat Grey Carrie's tail gas. Snort. The white saint, Katerina snorted coldly, and a black spiritual flame appeared in her hand. The flame spread along the tentacles that were about to reach her eyes, burning with the dark blue flame burning on them. The spiritual flame can burn all spiritual things, and the dark blue flame carries the power of suppression from the underworld. The poor creature from the underworld didn't hold on for long before it was burned to ashes and returned to the underworld to wait for its resurrection. However, the contest between these two demigods is still going on, and the immortal witch of Sequence 3 is clearly superior in this regard. However, thanks to the demigod-level underworld creature sealed in his body, Inzel did not fall into a disadvantage in this conflict. Both sides were obviously very restrained. They only gritted their teeth and competed secretly without destroying any furniture. A simple contest, without putting in more effort, can no longer determine the winner. Even the curses and diseases that the witch was familiar with were just like sleeping pills in the eyes of an undead. Whether it was the undead witch, or the undead, there was really no point in a fight between two demigods who could be resurrected. You are indeed a genius. The ageless witch, Katerina, was the first to stop. Witches are not hunters and are not keen on fighting. It is an honor for me to be praised like this by a witch who participated in the Pale disaster. The coldness emanating from Inzel's body gradually faded away. Is Inz Zangwil a genius? This is difficult to define. After all, this is the only clear record of a person who failed to become a demigod. So, he is not a genius. He is the newly promoted Archbishop of the Church of Evernight, and has obtained the qualification to be promoted to demigod in the Church of Evernight where many Scroll Kings gather. Although he failed, he survived and did not lose control after the failure. This is also a kind of talent. It would be really sad and lamentable if the failure of the sprint to demigod was indirectly driven by a mysterious force. Are you sure you want to cooperate with us? We used to be absolute enemies. And this is Backland, the place you have guarded for a long time. The smile of the immortal witch, Katerina, was somewhat teasing. In order to digest the potion, she set off a storm of death in the place she had guarded. She felt that Inz Zangwil had the potential to be a witch, and the path of death and the path of witch were not irreplaceable. This time, out of fear of death, he was able to betray the Church of Evernight, just to elevate the undead and prolong their lives. Next time, when death approaches again and the undead are about to enter eternal sleep, why can't he betray his gender and choose to become a beautiful witch? When the white saint Katerina thought of this, her eyes softened as she looked at Inzel. She almost said, "Sister, what future do you have in the path of the god of death? Just sell the sealed artifact 008 in your hand to us. At worst, you can get a copy of the extraordinary characteristics of the Unaging witch. If you are lucky and get the favor of the origin, it is not impossible for you to be promoted to an angel. Isn't this much better than holding a dangerous seal that you cannot control now? There is no future for you working alone. For those who cannot escape from the factory and who have to endure poverty, depression, despair, misery and oppression all their lives, isn't death a kind of salvation? I just betrayed the Church of Night, but my philosophy has never changed. If closing your eyes means sleeping peacefully, then I will be the one to free the world. I am no longer the Archbishop of the Church of Night, but I am still a follower of Night." Inzel's tone did not waver in the slightest. He stretched out his hand and tapped his chest 4 times, drawing a crimson moon and silently praising the name of the goddess. His pious and resolute look made the white saint on the opposite side feel a little frustrated. But there was an even greater desire to make this guy degenerate, completely betray his own beliefs, and turn him into a witch who enjoyed disasters and took pleasure in torturing others. Inzel felt that there was nothing wrong with his current way of thinking, which was in line with the character of the former Archbishop of the Night. If Ince Zangwill really had this kind of awareness, he could become a sequence 2 Archon of Death if he was lucky, or he wouldn't be trapped in the river of eternal darkness after death if he was unlucky. He would definitely be able to enjoy the best treatment in the kingdom of the Goddess of Night. Although I betrayed the Church of Night, I never betrayed the Goddess of Night. Organizations can change, positions can shift, but beliefs cannot change. I am so loyal, pure, pious. Seeing the white saint opposite him looking a little angry, Ince thought more and more that it made sense. This is the correct way to open, Ince Zangwill. Let's talk about cooperation. What you need to do is to help us keep an eye on a talented witch. She is an important treasure of our witch church. You can use your quill to give her a special experience that will help her grow. The specific matter also involves the Lowen royal family. I need to take you to meet their people and sign a contract that cannot be violated. After the White Saint finished speaking, she looked at Ince with a critical look. This guy was still a little naive. Once you get involved in some things, you will have no choice but to get deeper and deeper into them. There is no need to wait until later, because it is too late to turn back now. If Ince refuses, he will not be able to leave Backland. The angels of the Augustus family will take action to erase the traces of Ince appearance to prevent their plan from being leaked. This is actually quite tempting, but it will unfortunately cost them 008. Of course, the White Saint has checked with the angel to see if it can be robbed directly. The answer is no, the owner will die. The feather pen disappeared, and even the angel could not stop it. Chapter 122 How about a coup? Backland's daily life is a bit boring. This is also true for Shah Iyer, who is accustomed to multi-threaded operations. Sequence 7 is already at the level of being able to be sent out to serve as a city captain. Some cities' official beyonders do not yet have Sequence 7. For example, in Tingen City, the mandated punishers there are only at the Sequence 8 level. After Shah Iyerpu was upgraded to Sequence 7, he could selectively wear the red gloves. If he felt that a wild Beyander was suspicious, he would follow and investigate him. If he felt that a secret gathering was worthy of attention, he would participate in it and supervise the Beyander transactions there. This feeling is a little bit subtle. If you officially become a member of the Red Gloves, you have to go on missions, or if you are an ordinary night watchman, you have to be on duty in various places, or take shifts behind the Chinese gate. When Shah Iyer was bored, he arrested Alice for the 3rd time on the grounds of receiving a report from an enthusiastic person, suspecting that you were hiding dangerous items and seriously violating public safety order. When he was taken to St. Samuel's Cathedral for interrogation, Ms. Daly Simone, who couldn't bear it anymore, also dragged Shah Iyer by the collar and dragged him into the internal rest area behind the church, commonly known as the small black room. You think the work assigned to you by the church is too easy, right? Dai Li held her forehead helplessly. She had never seen anyone bullying a little girl like this. You can't blame me for this. This is the kingdom of Lowen. Backland is following some people and spreading some extreme solar ideas. Isn't it normal for me to invite her to the church for a cup of tea, learn about the situation, and give her some advice? Of course, Shah Iyer would not say that he was trying to improve Alice's resume. After all, there was some interaction with the Loon report in the annual report, which was very eye-catching. As for whether Daly and Alice believed it or not, he could only say that the church used small cookies to entertain guests. Alice also eats a lot. You just really want to investigate some wild beyonders. Can you find a real wild beyander? You arrested the man, closed the door, laid out snacks and tea, and the trial lasted for several hours. Aren't you afraid that the other night watchmen will complain against you? Daly was also helpless. She almost wanted to use her connections to get this guy into the Red Gloves. If an ordinary Nighthawk played like this, he would have been punished internally long ago. But this guy did not delay his work. Some time ago, he even returned all the bounties he found to the church's charity. As a result, the church is now responsible for some of his minor matters. Turn one eye and close the other, just pretend you didn't see it. Investigating real wild beyonders. Do I have the right to do that? Shah said hesitantly. Isn't this bad? Isn't this an abuse of power? Isn't this just a rubbish enforcement? As long as the other party is truly suspicious, you can investigate. This is the job of us Nighthawks. Daly rolled her eyes at Shah. She didn't believe this guy's performance. He must be pretending. If you put it that way, I actually know a suspicious wild beyander. Shah nodded. Isn't it okay to say it if you have the right to investigate? How many turtles and tortoises are hidden in Backland? Others may not know, but doesn't he know? For example, that nest of vampires, and the Blood Clan Marquis Nebe lying in the coffin. Oh, tell me about it. Daly became interested. She knew that what Shah mentioned specifically must be something special. Shah took out a photo from his arms. It showed a beautiful woman with blonde hair and delicate and elegant features. Audrey Hall, the youngest daughter of Earl Hall, a wealthy aristocrat among the nobility, and an unregistered wild beyander. Shah pushed the photo to Daly and asked with his eyes, "Can this lady investigate?" "I'm afraid this won't work." Daly's mouth twitched. "You carry a photo of this Miss Hall with you. You can't be." Daly naturally changed the subject, trying to dispel Shah's radical thoughts. "You can check wild extraordinary people at will, but you can't check them at will." "Yes, that's what you think. If you meet the right person, it won't be a problem to sell this photo for £100. With a little guidance, maybe even more." Shah kept the photo close to him, believing that he would be able to sell it sooner or later. "If it is sold, please give Miss Justice a small cake." "You donated £20,000 without batting an eyelid." Daly is also surprised. This doesn't look like acting. That money was picked up. If the photos are sold, it's my own money, which is different. Shah knew the difference very well. And there's something really fishy about this Miss Hall. I suspect she may have joined the Psychic Alchemy Society. Shah had no evidence and directly questioned. "According to the intelligence we have, there are indeed traces of some members of the Psychological Alchemy Society active in Backland's upper-class circles. However, as long as they do not obviously disrupt social order or harm the lives of innocent people, we generally take measures to condone them. Because we can't completely eliminate the existence of these people, and to put it bluntly, you simply want to invite Miss Hall to the church for tea, right? Earl Hall is an important believer in the church. If you dare to mess with his daughter, be careful that the Archbishop will come and scold you." Daly shook her head and advised Shah to give up the idea. She looked at the boy in front of her who was obviously unwilling, and felt that the night watchmen in Tingan City and Enmad Port were still adorable. "Not arresting Miss Justice. Then how can I threaten Earl Hall at the same time? If I don't threaten Earl Hall, how can I suppress Backland's noble class? If I don't suppress these people, how can I bring about some changes in this era? If one day I become an archbishop, can I invite Miss Hall to come for tea?" Shah leaned back in his chair listlessly, enjoying the shoulder massage service from the shadow servant and asked. He wasn't being kind-hearted, he just wanted to try a different route, just like playing a game. "If you become the archbishop, who will be in charge if you accept the cathedral?" Daly laughed when she heard this. This reason for wanting to become an archbishop was really strange. If Archbishop Anthony knew about this, he would probably use a look that could scare a dragon to tears to let this guy know that being an archbishop is not so easy. The Orthodox Church does not participate in the operation of the state. I don't know who came up with this rule. If you don't know, you might think that our church is not as powerful as the royal family and has declined several times, so we are unable to intervene. Shah made a righteous protest. He also wants a coup, so the archbishop can do it, right? Chapter 123 It's not impossible. After Shah was interviewed by Daly, he walked out of the lounge rubbing his aching waist. This is the aftereffect of losing an arm wrestling match to a certain abominable necromancer mentor. Who says women don't have a desire to win? He just wanted to simply test the power of sequence 6 of the death path. Was it necessary to use his hands to twist the skull? Men are childish. Why are you using so much strength? If you want to win next time, I'll let you win. The woman named Daily Simone walked out with a smug look on her face and patted Shah-Ir on the shoulder. After I advance to sequence 6, let's compete again. Shah-Ir accepted the fact that Yin Shutu was a fragile assassin, but it didn't matter. He didn't believe that the Rose Bishop of sequence 6 didn't add some physical strength. I'll wait for you, but if you become a Rose Bishop, even if I accidentally break your hand, you will be able to put it back together by yourself. Daily was just joking at first, but as she was talking, she suddenly started to have some expectations for no reason. What was going on? It's fine if you like corpses, but now you're not even going to let go of living people. Shah-Ir said sarcastically, but also a little curious. If he really crushed his palm, could he still put it back together? If so, what would it feel like? Will this heal itself, or will it be like a puzzle? If this doesn't have an automatic transmission, a novice won't be able to play. Rose Bishop, well, right. Come and help me move the things later. Shah-Ir stopped Daily, who was about to leave, and motioned for her to follow him into the gate of Channies. Moving things. Your stuff in the duty room. Daily was a little confused, but she didn't refuse. She followed Shah-Ir, greeted the patrols of Channies Gate, and then went into the underground area. Shah-Ir took Daily to the place where various extraordinary materials were stored, took out a list, and began to chat with the night watchman who was guarding the area. Daily was confused as she listened, and then she watched as Shah-Ir and the caretaker selected extraordinary materials from the material area according to the list, packed them in boxes of various materials, and did not forget to set up a layer of spiritual blockade. Sister Dai Li, that's all. Thank you for your hard work. Shah-Ir handed Daily a few boxes and stacked them up in front of Daily. He himself said goodbye to his night watchman colleagues who were in charge of the materials area in a relaxed manner. Can't you carry these? Daily followed behind Shah-Ir holding a few boxes, looking dangerously at Shah-Ir's lower back. You'd better really hurt your lower back, otherwise. Properly providing help to the opposite sex within one's ability is an effective way to bring the two parties closer together. I'm just creating an opportunity for you to get close to me, Ms. Daly. Be grateful. You will never meet another gentleman as proactive as me. Shah-Ir's words were heard by a patrolling night watchman. The night watchman stopped and looked at Shah-Ir and Daly, who was holding a bunch of boxes like a maid. His eyes, which had become a little cold and hard due to the influence of Channis's gate, became a little more lively. Even if you look at the entire street, Samuel's Cathedral, there are not many such talents. Oh, such a beautiful lady, I wonder if I would be honored to invite you to dinner. Daly said with some amusement. She deliberately emphasized the word, beautiful. Of course you have the honor. Next time, don't ask me. Just arrange it directly. This is a privilege I grant you. Ordinary people don't have this privilege. There's nothing to look forward to in Lowen's cuisine, but I know a very good restaurant in Intis. The church's welfare mechanism needs to be improved. It would be civilized if food, clothing, housing and transportation were all covered. Shah-Ir's words made the night watchman who heard them look at him with awe. Daly was not affected by this atmosphere and continued to follow Shah-Ir calmly. The old driver did not care about these looks. I helped you, shouldn't you treat me? One thing Daly couldn't deny was that Lowen's cuisine was nothing to look forward to. It had been quite some time since they came to Backland, so it was time to find a nice restaurant to relax. Of course we can drink some champagne, and it will be more fun to have more people. Shah-Ir did not refuse the treat. It was not expensive anyway. As long as the meat of extraordinary creatures was not on display, normal ingredients would not exceed the 5th place. Then I'll look forward to it. Daly looked at the door that Shah-Ir opened and said thoughtfully. What took you so long? The door opened and Alice's somewhat impatient voice was heard from inside. I think I can explain this. Shah-Ir watched as all the snacks he had taken out earlier disappeared, and suddenly he didn't want to explain anymore. So what if I'm a little late? Don't you eat less? Are these extraordinary materials? Alice looked away guiltily, looking at some boxes that Daly was holding. Our young master, you are not going to. Daly put the boxes on the table and looked at Shah-Ir with a somewhat amusing look. Should we say that he is worthy of being from the new party? Please check these extraordinary materials and pay for them if you find them okay. Shah-Ir gestured to Alice, then spread his hands towards Daly. Why not make money if there is money to be made? There are so many extraordinary materials piled up in Channy's Gate. Wouldn't it be nice to pick out some duplicate, less needed, and low-usage ones and exchange them for money or other extraordinary materials? I believe in the quality of your Church of Darkness. Alice said she believed it, but she had already opened the first box and began to check the materials inside to see if they were damaged or if their spirituality had been lost. How did you do that? Daly was a little surprised. She recalled the attitude of the caregivers inside Channy's Gate. These people were obviously aware of the situation. I've been behind the Channy's Gate for so long, it's impossible that I didn't do anything except patrolling and daily duty, right? The Church of Night is a family. Everyone is very friendly. Just a simple communication will be enough. Shah-Ir thought it was no problem. It was reasonable for him to switch from a clerk to an office worker and help clean up the warehouse inventory and optimize resource allocation. All he has to do is write a nice plan and let his superiors take a look. So you chose the members of the Church of the Eternal Sun. Daly didn't know what to say. This guy was really idle. As the night watchman, aren't you only responsible for handling matters related to the supernatural? The night watchman who was promoted from a civilian to a regular employee was flexible. That's right. A Loan church and an Intis church. A small part of the resources are exchanged. The impact is not big. I just make a little pocket money and accumulate some contribution points. Shah-Ir was not joking, he just wanted to ask Alice to help him earn some pocket money. The Archbishop of the church also knew about it, but he had no reason to specifically oppose it. This is not without precedent. The Orthodox Church has sold materials through secret gatherings more than once or twice. Chapter 124 Difference Engine Manuscript. After Alice checked that there was no problem with the goods, she said neatly that the money would be transferred directly to the account designated by the Church of Night through the bank in Hillston District. As for the remaining extraordinary materials needed by the Church of Evernight, she would come back to trade after the goods from Intis arrived at the embassy. Shah-Ir expressed his understanding of this. He was not worried that the Eternal Sun Church would default on its debt. After all, they were all Orthodox churches and they all had to save face. Moreover, the Eternal Sun Church was rich in fair contracts. After we finish this order, shall we go to Intis's restaurant for dinner together tonight? Shah-Ir invited. Of course, the more people there are at a meal, the more lively it is. Anyway, these people don't have a big stomach. Go, I will definitely go. Alice now wanted to hug Shah-Ir and give her a big kiss. Although she was just running errands for the church, she still got the hard work fee and the contribution she deserved. This is all the result of her hiding in a foreign country. Finish this vote. She can be promoted to Sequence 7 Sun Priest. How can I not be happy? So you didn't invite just me. Daly raised her hand and tapped Shah-Ir's shoulder and smiled. Only Intis people can taste whether Intis cuisine is authentic or not. Shah-Ir turned around and said that it was just a joke. He still had to consider Captain Dunn. He didn't want to play tricks, it was just a normal dinner invitation. Yes, the cuisine of our Intis is very delicious. There are many cuisines to begin with, and Emperor Russell also helped to improve them. Emperor Russell is simply omnipotent. Alice began to praise their former emperor. Things like the civil code, the opera The Return of the Count, jigsaw puzzles, and various foods. In the eyes of many Intis people, Emperor Russell is developing towards omniscience and omnipotence. Food is the first necessity of the people. Russell shouted this sentence and the coup went much more smoothly overall. Shah-Ir really wanted to know if Emperor Russell was standing on a high place at that time, and sighed leisurely when the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse under his command said that everything was ready. I have no intention of competing for supremacy, but I know the suffering of the people. Shah Iyer was thinking about what to eat in the evening. In the East District, in the Hilly Party, the zombie Jason reported to the ghost, Steve Shaw. Master Steve, several gangs have been quite active recently. The manuscripts we released through the underground market have attracted the attention of the authorities. Werewolf, Tyre stood at the back, watching the conversation between Ghost and Living Household, and calculating his recent earnings in his mind. Master Steve only used a few useless manuscripts to exchange for a large amount of activity funds, and also made the situation in Backland more complicated, which was undoubtedly very beneficial to them. Manuscript of the third difference engine. The price we sold it for is actually a bit low. This is the handwritten manuscript of Tyranny von Helmeschuen. However, we didn't release the complete version anyway. If the situation in Backland gets chaotic, maybe Sharon and Marich will reveal their flaws. The ghost tapped the armrests of the chair with his fingers. He felt that his qualifications were sufficient and he could be considered for promotion to demigod. To upgrade the Alien Pathway Sequence 4 puppet, a demigod-level mummy is needed as an aid. Shah Iyer thinks this is inaccurate. A more comprehensive statement should be that a demigod-level cursed object is needed. He is not a normal extraordinary person, but more like a human-shaped sealed object. If he gets the extraordinary materials he needs and directly synthesizes and strengthens them, he can become a demigod. There is no need to go through so much trouble. Master Steve, did you really change it? Live account, Jason said excitedly. Of course he knew that his boss took out these manuscripts not for money, but to exchange them for one of the main materials for the promotion to demigod. That's right. Although I'm not sure who provided this material, it should be related to the Lowen royal family or MI9. The vengeful spirit, Shah Iyer nodded. He would release part of the manuscript just to attract attention and wait for someone who knows the value of it to appear so that he can make a deal. For a country, it is not difficult to choose between a main material that is basically unused and a manuscript that has great value. Master Steve, what are you going to do with the other extraordinary materials? Live households. Jason asked expectantly. He now wished that tomorrow would come, so that the ghost could gather all the materials and try to become a demigod. If Steve succeeds, their immediate superior will be a demigod, and it will be very convenient for them to be promoted in the future. If Steve fails and dies, then he can use the extraordinary characteristics of the ghost that are extracted. How is the wary party developing? Shah Iyer did not answer Jason's question. He had many channels to obtain the last extraordinary material, so he was not in a hurry to upgrade it. Whether it is the God-forsaken land or the spiritual world, there are a lot of unknown natural extraordinary materials. Master Steve, we will do as you said and combine the information of all residents in several blocks. Because our information is relatively comprehensive and our agency does a good job, many nearby businesses are willing to cooperate with us. We have also received some ships at sea, and through the sea areas where Admiral Blood is active, we can safely transfer the needed materials to the Kingdom of Lowen, the Rorstad Islands, and the southern continent. Live household, Jason reported on the development work of the Hilly Party. In fact, the previous Grey Industries have begun to be marginalized in the Hilly Party. Now Hilly Dang mainly deals with intermediary work in the East District, including but not limited to house rental, housekeeping services, hiring thugs, running errands, and urban cleaning. Basically, they do all the work that can be done. It is a bit like a jack of all trades. If there is a shortage of temporary workers anywhere, they can come and place an order and they will assign people to them directly. The income is not too much, but the influence in the East District has increased a lot compared to before. It has also established cooperation with some government departments to help them deal with some literally dirty work. As for import and export, you can make more money by cooperating directly with the Blood Admiral, and collecting some small merchant ships and certain goods looted from other places from the Blood Admiral. Then, the sea areas that will be affected by the blood flow are the Kingdom of Lowen, the Rorstad Islands, and the southern continent. Trade will be carried out back and forth between the 3 points, and the ready-made manpower in the eastern continent will be directly used, which can also be considered to be somewhat profitable. Go ask the arbitrator lady to help us investigate what these gangs are doing. Of course we know they are looking for it. We have distributed the manuscript as bait through various channels, but other gangs are so active, so we have to take action too, right? Shah Iyer looked at his 2 subordinates and gave instructions. Understood, Master Steve. In fact, someone has commissioned us to conduct an investigation before. We can directly outsource the task. Livestock. Jason laughed twice and seemed to be very skilled in handling this kind of things. Chapter 125 Private Detective and Hostess. When Klein completed a commission and happily returned home with his first pot of gold, he actually saw a newly opened, Backland General Affairs Commission Company, on Minsk Street. When did this appear? Klein's attention was drawn to the strange name. In fact, many residents of the Bridgewood district were also attracted by the name. Looking at the introduction on the bulletin board, wasn't it obvious that this was just a small to medium-sized handyman shop? This shouldn't steal business from a private investigator like me, right? Klein thought uncertainly. He feels that the private detective industry is more or less professional. Klein originally thought so, until he walked closer and saw some of the tasks that could be accepted written on the notice board, including but not limited to temporary pet care, temporary housekeeping, temporary translation services, patrol services, event security, debt collection, road clearing, information investigation, information transmission, various errand services, various temporary labor services, various agency services. We accept various short-term or long-term commissions and arrange for relevant personnel to provide door-to-door services. The contracts are simple, flexible and convenient, providing timely and effective help to people in need. This. While Klein was momentarily stunned, many Bridgewood residents who had come to see the place because of its reputation had already walked in to inquire. Although this company is rather mixed and cannot be compared with those professional housing rental associations and domestic servant associations, its advantage is its flexibility. The Professional Domestic Servants Association accepts long-term business that lasts at least several months. When the middle-class people living in the Sherwood area are occasionally short of staff and lack temporary workers, it is difficult for them to find help. Now that there is such a comprehensive service company, they will certainly be very interested, although this company is just newly opened. However, the fact that they can accept so many and diverse types of commissions shows that they do have certain practical capabilities. It is also said that this company has set up stations in the East District, Docklands District, Sherwood District and Bridge District, so it should be quite professional. As Klein watched more and more people walk into the integrated service company, he suddenly felt that his career as a private detective was just getting started and was about to fail. Would such a big jack of all trades steal work from a small private detective like him? That shouldn't be the case, right? Even if some simple businesses are snatched away, the more complicated businesses such as investigating extramarital affairs, searching for missing persons, and business and economic investigations should not be snatched away, right? Even though he comforted himself in this way, Klein still had a bad feeling in his heart. With a heavy heart, he walked into this comprehensive service company and saw some young receptionists. These women all had bright smiles on their faces and their service attitude was very good. "How can this gentleman help me?" One of the ladies, upon seeing Klein come in, immediately came up to him and greeted him politely, leading him inside and enthusiastically providing various explanations and introductions. Such a warm attitude and thoughtful service made Klein, who had just come in to take a look, feel a little embarrassed, and even had a feeling of, "Why don't I just buy something? But this isn't a store." "Sir, please don't feel any psychological burden. We will provide an introduction and explanation to people like you who are interested in our company. That's my job. It doesn't matter if you don't need anything for the time being. You can learn about it first, and then come to us to entrust us with the business when you need it." The lady noticed Klein's embarrassment and smiled to comfort him. Even though Klein had no intention of offering a commission for the time being, she didn't care and continued to introduce enthusiastically. Because she really cherishes her current job. As a former nightingale in the Hilly Party's territory, she was engaged in a very undignified job with unstable income, complex environment, certain risks, and no dignity. Now she works at the Cherwood site, where her income is more stable than before, with a fixed weekly salary and a safer working environment. Working hours are more regular, and there are certain commissions and rewards. The most important thing is that this job is undoubtedly more decent. It is not like before, when hard work did not get respect. Her current job, at least, is more meaningful, providing services to people in need, rather than the sex trade she had before. This gave her some hope. She also cherishes this opportunity very much. Seeing the other party's sincere eyes, Klein also relaxed and patiently learned about this comprehensive service company. It is said that their headquarters is located in the East District and has sufficient human resources to help find reliable and credible personnel to accept these commissions according to the needs of the clients. Most of the people who come here need some temporary business, right? Can you really find people to accept these tasks in a short time? Although Klein understood the operating mode, he still asked out of curiosity. After all, it is easy to say but difficult to do. For example, if the person who accepts the commission suddenly changes his mind and runs away halfway through the work, then as the intermediary company, it must compensate the client for the loss. Yes, Mr. Moriarty, we can. The services we accept are mainly divided into two categories. One is common and can be handled directly at the front desk. The other is more private and will be handled in a separate room. Whether it is the former or the latter, we will assign the task to people we can trust, such as those who have a fixed residence and a fixed family. We also provide some jobs for the homeless, such as helping to clean the city, helping to move household objects, and helping to clean up garbage in the sewers. This kind of work in cooperation with the government, once we have established enough trust, we will entrust some gentlemen or ladies with our work. Distribute it to them. You know, some gentlemen may have some resistance to the identity of homeless people. We should respect their ideas and provide some work experience for these gentlemen to evaluate. The receptionist introduced patiently. Such a company, of course, cannot avoid dealing with all kinds of people, but the predecessor of Hilly Party was engaged in gray business. There is enough experience in this area. And the hedonistic trio can certainly control the situation. What do you do for a living? The receptionist asked politely. I am currently just a private detective of little fame. Klein said with a self-deprecating smile that with a business-stealing person like him on the same street, it would only be a matter of time before he, a private detective, could give up and become a bounty hunter. Private detective, may I ask where you live? Perhaps we can establish some cooperation in the future. The smile on the receptionist's face was more sincere and her eyesight was very good. It was obvious that this gentleman was different from those rude guys. He was a gentle and meticulous gentleman. It would be even better if we could reach some cooperation in the future. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.